to the interview from the BBC World Service. If you enjoyed today's programme, remember you can listen to the interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts. Until the next time, goodbye for now.
That program came to us courtesy of the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho. This is CBC Radio 1.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Welcome to the morning show. Thanks for joining us. We're here till 8:37 a.m., and we hope you stay with us for the whole show. Yeah, the commute this morning should be dry across southern Manitoba and Winnipeg, certainly. 788-3093 if you should need to report anything on your way to work or wherever you're going. Maybe you're going somewhere more fun than work. Right now it is a 0 in Winnipeg currently. Our temperature high today is 16 degrees, not a typo, and we are expecting sunshine. May McKillop's going to pick up that commute line. She's also directing the show. Good morning, May. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, our senior tech on the program behind the controls. We'll hear Abby on the air covering weather. And good morning to Brad Lillies, who is our producer and director of our YouTube stream this morning. So we hope you watch the show as well. We in our newsroom have Lauren Donnelly today filling in for Heather Wells, and she is here now at 3 minutes to 6 with our headlines.
Good morning. Doctors south of the border are looking to Canada as U.S. President Donald Trump cuts programs and slashes funding. One Winnipeg-born gynecologist says she's had enough. And as the federal election reaches the halfway mark, northern candidates are racing the clock to reach as many voters as possible. I'll have more on those stories coming up on Information Radio.
All right. Thanks a lot, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Well, I mentioned Winnipeg's daytime high. Brandon, cloudy this afternoon. Your high 15, though, as well. And in Thompson, lots of sunshine and a nice high of 11 degrees. Well, on the program today, in the first hour of the show, celebrating the artist in your life. Coming up to open the show, we're going to talk to the Winnipeg Arts Council about how you can nominate someone in our community for an award this spring. In addition, in the first hour of the program, we're going to hear more about issues in the north in the campaign. Lauren was just mentioning that from a local perspective. But across this country, a lot of people are not feeling heard in the north. And so we have a special report coming up from a reporter at CBC Yellowknife. That's in the first half hour of the program. A little bit later in the show, in the second part of the program, we have a story from our community reporter, Shanley Vidal. She's going to take us to a musical production that involves local teens who are performing a high school version of Evil Dead. Do you remember that old school movie? So it's back, it's on stage, and Shanley's going to take us there. And then the Premier of Manitoba is on the show live today. He'll join us live after 8 o'clock. Winnipeg Canoe here for our regular monthly interview. So obviously we'll go through a number of topics with the Premier. Right now, though, it is coming up to 1 minute to 6 and World Report on CBC.
On Cue with Tom Power.
The singer Tracy Chapman went from being a relatively unknown artist in the 80s to having a massive world-conquering hit with Fast Car. Tracy Chapman will be here to talk about how starting out as a street performer was what prepared her for the success that was coming down the road. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. There is no question one issue is dominating Canada's election campaign.
President Trump is looking to fundamentally restructure the international trading system.
The economy has been shrinking for 10 long years, well before the tariffs ever struck.
So we've got to get those tariffs removed.
And there will be more talk about Canada-U.S. relations again today. But about 100 mayors and other municipal leaders are trying to refocus the debate. They've all signed and sent a letter to the leaders of each major federal party. It offers 5 ideas to address climate change while defending our economic sovereignty. As Sam Sampson reports, they're calling the plan Elbows Up for Climate Action.
Jasper has experienced impacts in the last year that are profound, but sadly, they are not unique.
Jasper's Mayor Richard Ireland knows what an emergency feels like. 1/3 of his Rocky Mountain town, including his house, burned last summer in a wildfire. He and more than 100 other municipal leaders are now offering ideas to the next federal government to address the effects of climate change.
Our experience provides an opportunity, we believe, to help awaken the country to the urgency of this problem and present what we see as municipal leaders as solutions.
That includes funding a resilience, response, and recovery strategy for climate disasters, building a national clean electric grid, a high-speed railway, 2 million affordable green homes, and retrofitting homes with things like heat pumps.
I'm actually quite optimistic.
Former Toronto Mayor David Miller is now part of C40, a global group of mayors fighting climate change. He says these goals are achievable if Canada redirects money from fossil fuel subsidies.
And in this moment, when there is a chance to rethink about how to build a made-in-Canada economy, these steps are much more politically feasible.
Miller and Ireland hope today's letter sparks some kind of response from leaders, because so far, they say, climate issues have not been part of the campaign conversation. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
But environmental issues won't be the focus for Mark Carney today. Once again, the Liberal leader is pausing his campaign to act in his prime ministerial role. Carney will be in Ottawa, convening another meeting of the Canada-U.S. Relations Cabinet Committee. Karina Roman reports.
In light of the evolving situation...
That's how Mark Carney describes the chaotic messaging from Donald Trump and the White House this week on where tariffs stand on the world and on Canada. Trump put a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs targeting most of the U.S.'s trading partners, but left in place across-the-board 10% tariffs on those countries. Canada has managed to avoid those, but...
We have been subject to a series of direct tariffs that are still in place with respect to steel and aluminum, with automobiles, and, of course, I will call them the fentanyl tariffs that are in place.
And that's why Canada is not lifting its retaliatory tariffs off U.S. imports.
And while they have been imposed under different pretenses, they all are unjustified, unwarranted, and misguided.
The European Union has paused its retaliatory tariffs, and U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has warned Canada of consequences if it doesn't back down, pointing as an example to the tariffs the U.S. has put on China. But Carney says he believes the U.S. understands Canada's position.
Those tariffs are threatening our families, our workers, and our businesses.
It's not clear whether today's cabinet meeting will result in anything tangible, but it does allow Carney to keep making the election ballot box question about standing up to Trump. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
China is ratcheting up its response to the punishing Trump tariffs. Beijing now raising its counter tariffs on U.S. goods to 125%.
中欧应该履行国际责任。
In a statement read on Chinese state media, President Xi Jinping is calling for the European Union to join him in opposing what he calls U.S. bullying. China is facing 145% tariffs on its goods entering the U.S. Even before China's announcement, the trade war with the U.S. saw Asian markets fall today. Japan's Nikkei slid more than 5% in early trading. Markets in Hong Kong, Shanghai, South Korea, and Australia are also down. As of today, Canadians visiting the U.S. for more than 30 days have to register with the government, just one of the tougher immigration measures being imposed by the Trump administration. Others are more controversial, such as the deportation of alleged criminals before they're given a chance to defend themselves. The CBC's Katie Nicholson joins us from Washington. Katie, last night the Supreme Court ordered Trump officials to bring one of those deportees back to the U.S. Tell us about that case.
So Kilmar Abrego Garcia had been living in Maryland for about 6 years. He had a legal status that essentially prevented him from being deported back to El Salvador because he could face persecution from local gangs. But on March 12th, he was stopped by immigration authorities. His son was in the back seat of the car as he was taken into custody, and he was ultimately sent to a notorious super prison in El Salvador, which the Trump administration is paying $6 million to keep deportees. So the Trump administration admitted Abrego Garcia was deported through an administrative error, but also claims he's a suspected ranking member of the MS-13 gang. And his lawyers say that isn't true, and he's never even been charged with a crime. So this has been playing out in the lower courts over the last few weeks. And last night, the Supreme Court unanimously rebuked the administration and sided with a district court, which had demanded the return of Abrego Garcia. So the Supreme Court really essentially says in the ruling the government has to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody and ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. After that, a U.S. District Court judge issued an order which gave the DOJ until 9:30 this morning to deliver a plan to bring him back to the U.S.
Nonetheless, Katie, the Trump administration still being aggressive on the immigration file.
Yeah, and this is a large part of what Donald Trump campaigned on. Multiple outlets in the U.S. report that the administration is canceling social insurance numbers of immigrants with temporary status, which, really makes it impossible for them to bank or get a credit card. And in a policy that went into effect on Wednesday, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services says it's screening immigrants' social media for evidence of anti-Semitic activity, specifically targeting people trying to get permanent residency and foreigners connected to universities. So this all comes as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is suggesting any non-citizen can be deported for their beliefs. And this is all coming out of that deportation case of a Columbia University activist, Mahmoud Khalil, who was involved in several demonstrations against the war in Gaza.
CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Germany and the UK are pledging new military support for Ukraine to defend against Russian troops. British Defence Minister John Healey announced a new contribution worth more than $630 million. He says it'll help buy radar systems, anti-tank mines, and drones.
2025 is the critical year for the war in Ukraine, and this is the critical moment. A moment for our defence industries to step up, and they are. A moment for our militaries to step up, and they are. A moment for our governments to step up, and we are.
He was speaking at a meeting of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group this morning in Brussels. Canada is among the 50 countries attending those talks. There's a major push to make international shipping greener at a global meeting happening in London right now. On the table, a carbon tax on shipping. But a deal today could impact an industry at the center of global trade. Anayat Singh has more.
It could be the first ever global carbon tax, this one on the over 50,000 cargo ships that carry international trade.
A really exciting moment.
Miyako Oshio is the Director of Environmental Affairs at the Shipping Federation of Canada.
One reason that this is so important is that it would enable investment in alternative fuels.
Oshio says a carbon pricing system would push companies to reduce their emissions. The UN's International Maritime Organization has been working on how to get the industry to cut its emissions. Andrew Dumbrell is a Canadian advisor to advocacy group the Clean Arctic Alliance.
Shipping is close to 3% of global emissions. If it was a country, it would be around Germany, sixth largest in the world.
Canada, along with Europe and a large group of low-income countries, support the proposal, but China, Brazil, and a group of other major developing economies that depend on trade oppose the levy, saying it would reduce their exports and threaten food security. They were joined by the US this week, which raised concerns about inflation. But there's still plenty of hope a deal will get done.
But it doesn't mean there won't be a deal, and it doesn't mean there's not a possibility for high ambition.
A carbon price could raise over $100 billion US a year, much needed money that could be spent on helping developing countries address climate change. Inayat Singh, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you're enjoying World Report in a podcast, follow us, tell a friend. It helps to spread the word. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, hey, Friday. What's that? You're going to be 16 degrees in Winnipeg? We'll take it. I'm Marcy Marcuso. Welcome to the end of the week, and thanks for joining us to start your day on CBC. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube this morning. It is 0 in Winnipeg. Abby's in with more of that lovely looking forecast in a moment. This hour on the program, we're going to hear about some hot button issues from the colder parts of the country. We will talk more in detail to a CBC reporter in Yellowknife about some of what you just heard on World Report. Issues people are thinking about there ahead of the federal election. In addition, celebrating with the artist in your life. Coming up first on InfoRad today, we're going to check in with the Winnipeg Arts Council about how you can nominate someone in our community for an award this spring. So stay tuned. We'll run down what we're talking about. Lauren Donnelly is here with our news headlines now. Good morning.
Good morning. Infrastructure, education, cost of living, and healthcare are some of the top issues for candidates and voters in northern Manitoba. And those candidates are racing the clock to reach as many voters as possible in the riding. Voter turnout in the Churchill-Kawetinakaski riding was 36% last election. And this is the first federal election since the end of the pandemic, and on-campus advance voting is an option once again. But some new citizens say they wish casting a vote were more straightforward for them. We'll have more on those stories in your next local news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Marcy.
Well, Brad is our YouTube producer, and he's got this beautiful shot of downtown Winnipeg up, which let's have a look at this together, Abby. Look at the sky this morning, Abby Adiyemi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, that's the golden hour approaching us.
Oh, it really is. So for those of you that aren't, up watching the show on YouTube this morning, maybe you're out and about in Winnipeg and just seeing this, but it's classic. The streets have sort of dried out. They got a bit cleaned up from that rain, and now we've got just that layered sky with a little bit of kind of an orange brightness coming up, and the top's blue. And, after a couple of cloudy days, I'm looking forward to today. I really hope your forecast holds.
Yeah, in about 30 minutes from now, you just see that sunshine we're expecting to really hit us this part of the province. So it will be a beautiful one. We're going to start sunny in most of the regions. However, Marcy, the clouds are still going to roll in. We did have a slight chance of rain in some parts of the province. But for Winnipeg today, we are starting with clear conditions and a sunny forecast this morning. Cloud covers will come in the afternoon. I noticed some fog patches on my way coming in from the south this morning. That should fade away as we get into the day. Some breezy conditions will come with that. Then we warm up to that high of 16. I would call it, if you're trying to go through your wardrobe now or your dresser, I think this is a day you might want to test out some of those dresses. It's a dress day.
Or spring shoe day. I did both.
Yeah,
I did my rain
shoe,
jacket and my white runners today.
If you want to take the chances on a dress, you go for it. You just rock it. So it's going to start sunny in most of the regions down south. We're going to see some breezy conditions, and that's similar to the southern part. However, up north, it's going to be more like cloudy and cooler compared to temperatures down south. But Winnipeg today, we're starting sunny and then a bit of clouds later in the day, and we'll be warming up to that 16. I've been waiting for that.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
May McKillop is here to talk more about the drive and the commute. Hi.
I want to talk about spring clothing because I brought out my rubber boots yesterday.
Woo-hoo!
And it was just a delight, I would say. So thank you for that reminder, Abby. It was a little chilly when I left the house this morning. I needed to scrape some frost off my window, but I'm shedding the winter with that.
Nice.
And today I'm looking forward to that high of 16 that Abby mentioned. Nothing major to report on the commute so far. The highways are looking clear, maybe a little bit of slick in some colder areas. But I am standing by to take calls on the commuter line. So if you're seeing anything get in the way, whether that's a stalled car, anything along the way of the commute active, or if you're driving as well, give me a call and I'll pass that message along. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
Look at that. McCreary's already 7 degrees right now. Well, up first this half hour, as I mentioned, the Winnipeg Arts Council wants to celebrate local artists, and they're asking you for some help because they need nominations. For almost 20 years, the Winnipeg Arts Council has been highlighting artists and patrons in our city who are making an impact. Now, this year, they have awards, and they're part of the Mayor's Luncheon in June. Ahead of all that, though, they, as I mentioned, need you to nominate someone. So we've reached Executive Director Dominic Lloyd to tell us more about these awards. Thanks for being up early. Hi, Dominic.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what can you tell us about this year's awards?
Well, this year we're going to do the same thing as we've been doing, as you say, for almost 20 years. These awards have been around since 2007. And what it is it's really a chance to celebrate the people in the community who are really, making a mark, making a difference, making an impact with their work. So these are professional artists at all stages of their careers who are really making waves here in Winnipeg as well as across Canada and around the world. And this is just a chance for the city and the community to celebrate those people.
Tell us about some of the categories.
Well, we've got 3 categories. So the RBC On the Rise Award is something that celebrates an emerging artist. And, it's somebody who's not at the very beginning of their professional arts career, but they're, in the early stages, but they're, as we say, they're really turning heads. They're showing nationally, they're getting attention. And the Making a Mark Award is for a professional Winnipeg artist who is really doing things across Canada and around the world, and is having those exhibitions, having those showings of their work. And this is I'm using exhibitions. It's artists in any discipline. So we've had visual artists, dancers, actors, writers, people who are really garnering attention. And then the Making a Difference Award is one that is really about Winnipeg as well, and it's about the arts community in Winnipeg. So that's an award that really celebrates somebody who has made a significant contribution to the community, sort of beyond one sort of small context, and really, as it literally says in the title of the award, made a difference to the community. Yeah.
Who are some of the, just so people can sort of wrap their heads around it, who might some of the past recipients be, and what kind of impact do the awards have?
Well, I mean, the awards, the impact that they have, it's amazing. It's something that, people, when they receive the award, are really proud of. I see a lot of artist resumes, and it's something that people always have on their resume that, I won the Winnipeg Arts Council Award in 2012, et cetera, et cetera. And it really is, it's an affirmation of people's work as well. And again, because the nominations come from the community, it's an affirmation of the support that the community gives them. Last year, we had a wonderful collection of winners. The On the Rise Award was Ekene Emeka Maduka, who is a visual artist originally from Nigeria. She lives in Winnipeg now, and she is showing in New York and Europe and all over the place. And just recently out of school here at the University of Manitoba. Sharon Bajer won the Making a Mark Award. So, she is an actor who has been around Winnipeg for a long time and really, done a lot in the theater community. And the Making a Difference Award last year was won by a Métis bead artist and an educator named Janine Crouchy, who's really done a lot to create a culture around beading and around the education around beading and the connections that beading makes between Métis cultures and other cultures. And it's sort of, some people have been, working out there in the community, and other people who have just been sort of plying their work quietly and impactfully for years and years and years. And that was the kind of winner that Janine was.
The mayor's really got on board with trying to make celebrating arts intentional in our community. So he has the Mayor's Luncheon for the Arts coming up, which is a time to reflect on the past year of art in the city. Why is it continually important locally to shine a spotlight on the importance of art in Winnipeg, where we live?
Well, it's exactly as you say, Marcy. In Winnipeg, where we live, art is what makes us who we are. At the Winnipeg Arts Council, we really believe that a city is defined by its art and by its artists. And so that's kind of why we've been doing this since 2007, is to just, to remind ourselves as much as anybody, but to remind the community about the power and the importance of art in our community. Art is what helps us express and feel and creates, empathy and understanding, but it's what allows us to tell our stories and share our stories with each other as well. So Winnipeg can't be Winnipeg without the art that makes it Winnipeg. So I think that's why it's important.
Where can people go? Tell us the website if they want to read more about nominating someone.
Yeah, please visit our website at winnipegarts.ca. Winnipeg's all spelled out, and arts has an S on the end of it.
All right, Dominic, thanks very much for being up early. Good luck with getting a lot of nominations in, and appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Marcy. Appreciate it.
It's Dominic Lloyd, the Executive Director of the Winnipeg Arts Council. So you can check out their website if you want to nominate someone. The award celebration will be held as part of that luncheon I mentioned for the arts on June 5th, and that is at the RBC Winnipeg Convention Centre.
Your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news. Your news that matters. News that belongs to you. Your World Tonight. Every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1. On demand on the CBC Listen app and everywhere you get your podcasts.
6:21 is the time right now. Our high today, 16. Sunshine to start. Increasing cloud, though, this afternoon. And some fog patches could be around for you this morning. Let us know if it's causing a commute problem. So far, so good, so early. 6:21, as I mentioned, we are now 2 weeks away from the federal election. And as part of our coverage nationally, we're spending time asking Canadians about their priorities, as we do always. But today, we're putting a spotlight on our neighbours in the Northwest Territories. Jenna Delevich is with CBC Radio. She tells us what Northerners have been sharing. I spoke with her yesterday.
Good morning.
So there's been a lot of focus on the Arctic of late. How is that translating into what you've been hearing from people?
Well, it was only a couple of weeks ago I was speaking with shows across the country about Arctic sovereignty. Even before the campaign kicked off, federal party leaders were visiting the territories with different promises about spending for military hubs and new infrastructure. People on the ground are saying the North needs more infrastructure. We spoke with Uluhuktuk Mayor Pat Klingenberg, who says with the federal focus on the Arctic, he hopes his community will benefit from infrastructure upgrades.
Well, first, we would need, for military infrastructure, what we need in the community is better airports, able to expand the range for our Air Force to monitor our Arctic Ocean. That would be really good. And if our airports are upgraded so that they can accept the aircraft that we need to monitor, that would not just be good for the military, but that would be really good for our communities to be able to have proper runways to provide that, especially to provide emergency services to our communities.
Uluhuktuk is in the Beaufort Delta region in the territories, which is in the Northwest, where there are a number of issues people would like to see addressed.
It's interesting, airports and getting emergency services to people. It repeatedly comes up when we do stories in northern Manitoba and some of our communities that are physically, geographically isolated as well. What else have you been hearing about from folks?
Well, the price of heating fuel in the area, as well as across the territory, has been brought up several times by residents. People call the cost impossible. Billy Archie lives in Aklavik and drives the medical bus between Aklavik and Inuvik. He says the price of heating fuel is a big issue for him heading towards the election.
Something that the northern people have to realize that we have a lot of minerals and a lot of oil and gas up here, and it's something that we got to make sure we get the best deal for everything, right? With the M18 coming up just outside of Tuck there, and hopefully we can get some reasonable costs for some of the fuel, because, paying $2.73 a liter for heating oil for our home is it's challenging.
During the territorial election in 2023, candidates said the high cost in the North was a major challenge for residents.
So now it's 2025, 2 years later. Is it still a big issue?
Absolutely. It was only a couple months ago, leaders in the Sawtoo region were in talks about getting food banks set up in each community as a way of dealing with the high cost of groceries. Last year, a food bank opened in Aklavik with 90 out of 251 households signed up for the service. Jimmy Kalanick is a harvester and outfitter in Inuvik. He says cost of living is a big issue.
To bring all the goods to the north is so expensive, especially with the carbon tax. Just adds more cost to the consumers, that a lot of people can't afford the things that they want to do or the one they want to buy just because of those taxes and those extra expenses that the federal government impose on us. So it makes it really hard. Like all the nutritional food that we need. There's people that traditionally get it off the land if we need it, but again, that costs money, costs gas, costs, the equipment. It's all expenses.
No, you just heard Jimmy reference the carbon tax. That was removed when Mark Carney took power temporarily as prime minister, but the cost of living does remain high.
What else did you hear in terms of people's concerns?
Healthcare is also an issue. For a personal story, I've been on a wait list for a family doctor for about 4 years now, but that's nothing compared to how long I've heard other people have been waiting. And I also want to know, I live in the capital in the territory, so we have an urgent care center here. There are 32 other communities in the Northwest Territories, and some places only have health centers or health cabins with a nurse. Megan Bertrand lives in Nahanni Butte, a community that has a health center with a nurse on call. She says healthcare is top of mind.
Being in a small community, it's really hard to access emergency medical care. And not only that, I mean, seasonal care as well. I mean, I remember being, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 years old, and we would see the doctors and nurses every 4 months, like clockwork. Every four months, they would come and visit us, stay a week or so, and everyone in the community would have their checkups and whatnot. And now I probably see them maybe once or twice in a year. I would also like to see them talk about how they're going to improve food stability in means of like prices and how people in the north are going to access fresh food without it like spoiling, getting from A to B.
For context, Nahanni Butte is more than an 8-hour drive to Yellowknife.
Now we understand why she's talking about food spoiling 8 hours. Is it a matter of recruiting workers to the north? Like, where does recruitment play in?
Well, recruitment's one thing. There are staff shortages in all types of fields out here. Previously, I've reported on worker shortages, and there's a number of reasons a company or a corporation might be dealing with that. But one thing I do hear over and over again is lack of housing. Mervyn Grubin is in Inuvik and runs E. Grubin's Transport. He says there needs to be more housing in the NWT.
It's just terrible. You look at all the people that are just, there's probably 5, 6, 10 people in some houses that are, we're living in old 50, 60-year-old houses and getting condemned. And a lot of people are sick, and all because these houses are so old and nothing's being done for new ones. It's a terrible situation. But when I say infrastructure, I mean, if you bring infrastructure work up here, that'll bring, people and houses, new infrastructure, or new buildings, which is really, really badly needed up here.
And for the housing that is available, especially in the rental market, affordability continues to come up as an issue too.
Jenna, thank you for the report.
Thanks for having me.
So that is CBC's Jenna Delevich. She is in Yellowknife, and CBC is she's a CBC radio up there. We're hoping to hear directly from people, of course. As we always do, we head out and about in Manitoba. But if you want to call, you can also reach the team nationally also. So the local place to call is 788-3205 if you want to talk about what your issues are in this election. But you can also reach the national team at ask@cbc.ca. That's ask@cbc.ca. Tell us what matters and especially what's been happening in your life that shapes your perspective. I'm Marcy Marcusi with Information Radio live in downtown Winnipeg. And coming up on Business News, Crystalie Ramlakan will join us with her report. Today, she will look at the markets as we have done each and every morning. And we always do, but now we have stories about the markets as they wildly swing because of what's been happening with Trump tariffs. But we also are going to hear about another retailer, yet another clothing retailer in Canada closing its doors. This is Frank and Oak. They own 9 stores across Quebec, Ontario, and BC. So stay tuned. We'll see exactly what happened to them and whether or not it's similar to what's been happening to other Canadian retailers. We do have one traffic note to pass along. Maria called. Good morning, Maria. I know she's a regular listener and has a long commute, so she's listening along the way. But she can't see. That is to say, she can't see the beautiful sunrise this morning. She said around Deacon's Corner, westbound on the south perimeter, it was just so foggy that she couldn't even make out the sky. And it's pretty clear out there, so that's saying something. So thanks very much, Maria, for highlighting that fog could be a challenge this morning. And it is, in fact, in our forecast that we could have some challenges. So there's fog patches being reported around Winnipeg. So around the ring road and the perimeter, you want to be careful. 788-3093, that's the number that Maria called if you want to reach us there as well. Coming up next on CBC 89.3 FM, it's your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's clear and -2 with freezing fog at the airport. Sunny with increasing cloudiness this afternoon, windy and a high of 16 degrees. The northern riding of Churchill-Kawetanookaski is one of the largest in terms of First Nations voters. Candidates are racing to visit as many First Nations as possible before the vote on April 28th. Raymond Robinson lives on the Pimicikamak Cree Nation. He says he feels forgotten by politicians.
To all of you out there that are going around campaigning, we are people too. First Nations are people. 1951. was the day we were finally recognized as being people, being persons in Canada, and having the right to vote.
Robinson wants more funding for healthcare, economic development, and infrastructure. The riding has been held by the NDP's Nikki Ashton for 17 years. She's challenged this election by Liberal Rebecca Chartrand, who came within 1,000 votes of defeating Ashton in 2015. Dylan Young is running for the PPC and Lachlan Denardi for the Conservatives. Advanced polls are returning to Manitoba campuses after being scrapped in 2021 due to the pandemic. Elections Canada found in the campaign fewer than half of young adults cast a ballot. Mascan Vlora is in her third year at the University of Winnipeg and just got her citizenship. She'll be marking an X for the first time.
It's complex. I wish there was a way that it was made easy for newcomers to get to know about how they can vote. Like talk to someone on the phone and get some more information about it. That would be great.
Early voting at 4 post-secondary institutions starts April 13th. All you need is proper ID. Liberal leader Mark Carney is stepping away from the campaign trail today as he holds the latest meeting of the Canada-U.S. Relations Cabinet Committee. He addressed the tariff issue during a rally Thursday in Hamilton, Ontario.
We are fighting unjustified U.S. tariffs, including those on steel and autos with counter tariffs of our own. And those are designed to cause maximum pain in the United States, but have only a minimal impact here in Canada.
Known as Steel Town, Hamilton is one of the cities most impacted by those U.S. tariffs. Canada is being urged to act fast to attract U.S. physicians who want to leave due to the Trump presidency. Dr. Joss Reimer is president of the Canadian Medical Association. She says there's a 600% increase in American physicians visiting an online portal to learn more about practicing here. Reimer adds the biggest issues to get them here are licensing, visa, and immigration processes.
If we've got the federal government working on the immigration process and the provincial government working with the provincial college to fast track their licensure so that they have that license and they can work in the province, that's the best way to get folks from the U.S. into Canada quickly so they can contribute to the Canadian health system.
Reimer says 4 provinces have already removed red tape to make it easier to license U.S. doctors. And a Winnipeg-born physician says she's had enough with the United States. Dr. Jen Gunter is moving back to Canada. The gynecologist has seen the erosion of reproductive rights during her 30 years south of the border. Now with Donald Trump back as the U.S. president, she says those rights will crumble even faster. And she's worried about other social services.
The absolute just gutting of healthcare. You know, it's day after day, we're hearing about some new horror about programs that are being slashed. Academic freedom is obviously in peril at many large universities with grants being withheld.
Gunter says Trump's re-election has sped up her timeline of returning home. She plans to continue living on the West Coast, but now in Canada. And finally, the Jets moved closer to the top seed in the Western Conference with a win last night. Winnipeg bested the Dallas Stars in a shutout. The game winner came early on from Nino Niederreiter.
Rink wide off a deflection. Lowry set it up for Morrissey. Tip score. Nino Niederreiter got the redirection on the Morrissey blast. And late in the first period, it's the Jets who strike first.
That courtesy of Sportsnet. Mason Barron also scored and Kyle Connor netted 2 goals in the third period. The team is just 1 point away from taking the number 1 seed for the first time. Goalie Connor Hellebuck stopped 24 shots for his single season franchise record 45th win. The Jets take the ice again tomorrow in Chicago. And that is your CBC News in Winnipeg.
All right, thanks, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Lauren Donnelly is live in our news center filling in for Heather Wells this morning. Well, it is 6:35 a.m. and you're with CBC. Thanks for joining us wherever you're joining. This can be one of the longest weeks, Abby, because even though it's, a regular week, it's spring break. So by the time you get to Friday in school, kids are shifting.
That shift is happening already.
The shift in the weather is happening too.
Yeah, the shift in the weather is happening. We're going to see sunny starts today. Most regions regions in the south. And then later we might see some cloudy conditions rolling up north. Not the same. It's chillier, though we're going to see a mix of sun and clouds there. Light rains also in the forecast. Looking at the conditions in the Red River Valley region, right now in Winnipeg, some foggy conditions around the perimeter and outside the perimeter. So if you're not spotting it in the city, it's actually around us and outside. For those commuting into the city and walking outside the city, you will be encountering some foggy conditions as you commute. Right now, 0-1, that's what we're seeing in most of the regions around the city. Clear conditions in some part, but fog patches also here and there. We start off sunny, then some cloud cover this afternoon. A light breeze from the south would come in, and then we'll warm up to a high of 16 degrees. Tonight will stay mostly cloudy, but that should clear as we get overnight, and then we'll see more like sunny conditions tomorrow. We'll look at 18 degrees. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region from Morden, Morris, Winkler, all the way down to Altoona, crossing into the U.S. border. Clear conditions, but you will encounter foggy conditions also in that area. Once that clears off, you see some sunshine today, and you warm up to around 17 degrees. We head west. We're seeing Brandon at -1 at this time. Partly cloudy skies we get. The sun and cloud will crawl in as you get into the day. Then it gets cloudy. Fog being reported this morning. That should clear also as you get into your day. You then warm up to a high of 15. Down in the Parkland region, we're seeing Dauphin hovering around 6 degrees, 7 degrees. Clear right now. Clouds will build through the day. There's a slim chance of rain in the forecast. It gets breezier times, and you see temperatures warm to 13 degrees. Good morning, Gimli. You are at -1. Sunshine also in the forecast for you today. Some cloud cover will roll in later. There's a chance of rain. Fog patches are noticed on the highway to that part of the province. That should clear as you get into the morning, and then you warm up to 15 degrees. Now we travel into the northern part of the province. The powerful influence surrounding areas -2, cloudy now. You get a break from those cloudy conditions later, and then you get to a high of 10. There's a chance of rain in the forecast sometime this afternoon. Moving to Thompson, 0, clear conditions, lots of sunshine in the forecast, already making its appearance for folks there. And then some clouds will roll in by the noon period. You warm up to 11. And then further north in Churchill, -11 and clear. Some cloud covers will come in later. Also, you have a slim chance of rain for folks in Churchill. Light winds and not too chilly for Churchill this morning. You will be seeing highs near -2. So compared to Winnipeg, where it's mild, and we'll be seeing that highs of 16, 17, 18 down south. The north will be getting highs around -1, -2.
All right, that's all right, though, because, I mean, they've been at, feels like -30
Yeah,
this week.
-30 there. So this is a break. That's what I mean. That's the break.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
We have had calls already on our listener line, the commuter line, and May's been picking them up.
Yeah, I've been hearing about that fog a bit. We heard from Maria, who is driving on the South Perimeter westbound around Deacon's Corner area, and she was disappointed she couldn't see the sunrise because the fog was getting in the way.
Well, if it makes you feel better, Maria, now I'm looking at our feed and the fog's starting to roll into downtown Winnipeg.
It is. And I just got a call from Linda from Old St. Vital and said that just in her backyard there's lots of fog. So she thought it was funny that we weren't seeing it here.
It's happening now.
It's happening now, but you know what? I'm excited for that sunshine.
Yeah, I know.
I'm holding out for that. I'll also let everyone know that you may expect some delays if you're heading down Pembina. Now, this is northbound Pembina. It's down to one lane approaching Stafford. So it may cause some difficulties turning left onto Stafford there. So expect delays, and give me a call if anything else is coming up in the commute today. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks a lot, May. May McKillop is directing the show and covering the commute. Crystalie Ramlakan is at our business news desk, as always, and she joins us now. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with markets. We've been starting with markets all week. They've been swinging up and down. How are they looking as the week's getting ready to end here?
Yeah, so North American markets posted more losses yesterday, reversing some of what they had gained in a rally the day before. So markets soared on Wednesday after President Donald Trump said he would pause some tariffs, but he did keep a 10% baseline levy in place. and he is now escalating the trade war with China. So the White House says that tariffs on China are actually even higher than previously announced, and they're now at 145%. And then today, China has announced it will raise tariffs on U.S. goods to 125% now. Now, market watchers say we've only ever seen volatility this high in 2008 and 2020. And of course, those are the years that we saw the global financial crisis and the pandemic. And the S&P TSX closed down 712 points. In New York, the Dow was down just over 1,000 points, and the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ were both also down. But experts say the ups and downs of the TSX have been a little less dramatic compared to the U.S. markets because of the Canadian index's exposure to gold. And gold prices have been strong as investors are trying to find a safe haven amid all of this uncertainty.
Let's go to another story. Yet another clothing retailer is closing.
Yeah, that's right. So Frank & Oak says it is closing 9 stores across Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia by May 7th. The Montreal-based company has 150 employees, but says it doesn't know how many will lose their jobs as a result of these closures. Once the liquidation begins, all sales will be final, but the retailer's e-commerce business will continue to operate. So the move comes after Frank & Oak filed for creditor protection in December. It filed a notice of intention which helps companies restructure and avoid bankruptcy while providing creditors with some compensation. So the business says it's been facing financial difficulties because of the pandemic and supply chain issues, which have delayed shipments of inventory. And the retailer began searching for an investor or a buyer in mid-January. And court filings say the company saw robust interest from potential suitors in the first phase of this process, but it has yet to announce any successful bidders.
Let's go back to tariff news because it appears that the trade war is hurting the tourism business south of the border. You actually have a detailed look at that.
Yeah, so, Canadian visits to the United States plummeted last month amid anger over tariffs and annexation threats, on top of growing fears about treatment at the border. So last month, the number of Canadians returning home by car from the U.S. fell nearly 32% compared to the year before. It's the third month in a row of declines and the steepest plunge since the pandemic. And return trips by air fell 13.5%. And return trips from other countries increased about 9%. So reports of travelers being sent to detention or processing centers have sent shivers north of the border. And even snowbirds are under more scrutiny with the stricter registration rules for Canadians now who stay in the U.S. for more than 30 days. But U.S. Customs and Border Protection in New York State says it's business as usual. As long as people have their documents, they should be fine. And it says the Canadian dollar may help explain this slowdown. But you know what? The loonie has hovered around 70 cents U.S. for the past few months. But it was actually in a similar territory in December before the tariff rhetoric ramped up. And Canadians took 7% more car trips that month.
Yeah, we've had snowbirds from Manitoba on who've talked about selling their homes on our show, specifically from Arizona, and then another man who sold his home in Florida right now. What's going on in the markets otherwise?
In Europe, markets are turning negative after early positive trade today. So Germany is down, the UK is up, France is down. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is down, Shanghai and Hong Kong are both up. Oil is down 1 cent to 60.06 US per barrel. Gold is up 40.80 to $3,216 US per ounce. And the dollar is up almost half a cent to 72 cents U.S.
All right. Thanks a lot, Crystal. Have a great weekend.
You too, Marcy. Thanks.
That's our business news on CBC. Time Time right now is 6:44 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on that app and YouTube. It is 1 degree in Winnipeg. Fog patches being reported kind of far and wide. The fog's rolled into the city. It's dusting off the tops of the buildings, almost like looking like you floured a donut. Outside of the city of Winnipeg, we have had some calls about the visibility being more seriously impacted around Deacon's Corner westbound. Just take it easy on the south perimeter there and give us a call if you're having any other trouble on the commute. 788-3093. Well, next in the show, let's have a moment for maple syrup, shall we? You might have heard Heather in the news just last week talking about sugaring off here and the producers in Manitoba. Maple syrup is considered by some to be across Canada our liquid gold. Our country produces more than 70% of the world's supply of the sweet stuff. That's according to government statistics. But are you sure that the syrup you're putting on your pancakes is the real deal? Malika Singh says that it's something you'll have to seriously consider as U.S. tariffs put the industry at risk of food fraud. She's a PhD candidate at the University of Guelph's Department of Food Science, and she explains this morning how the trade war could affect your maple syrup.
Historically, instances of food fraud have increased during harsh economic times and supply chain disruptions. So, for example, if you were to take the last 4 years into context, we've experienced a global pandemic. We've experienced regional wars, significant climate events, all of which have caused significant constraints in terms of supply and demand in the supply chain. As such, it's estimated that since 2020, instances of food fraud have increased by more than tenfold. It's the same with tariffs. Up until last week, we were unsure of what the tariffs on Canadian products, including Canadian maple syrup, and the equipment used to make maple syrup would be. But regardless of what the actual tariffs are, increased threats of tariffs is enough to cause uncertainty in the supply chain. And this can incentivize food fraudsters to substitute pure maple syrup with a lower value product, ultimately leading to an increase in maple syrup fraud. Often, maple syrup is adulterated by the diluting or mixing or completely replacing with a lower value syrup. And oftentimes this can be, for example, corn syrup. So on the labels, for example, it might say pure maple syrup, but it might actually be a blend of syrups or not even maple syrup at all. Other ways can also include dilution with water, addition of other sugars, or even mislabeling the point of origin. So unfortunately, it's difficult to detect maple syrup fraud on the consumer side. And unfortunately, these food fraudsters are quite smart, and they actively try to avoid detection. So there's really a need for quick and cost-effective and more complex testing of maple syrup along the supply chain.
So that's Malika Singh, PhD candidate at the University of Guelph's Department of Food Science, talking about maple syrup and what you might want to be thinking about if you're heading out to purchase maple syrup, and what you might want to understand about the supply chain and what's happening with the trade war. Now, McCreary, Manitoba's Maple Syrup Festival is coming up. This year, it's coming up later this month. It is on April 26th and 27th.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free. This election, your vote matters more than ever. CBC News is your go-to with real-time election tools, helping you make an informed decision. Use Vote Compass to find out which party is closest to your views. Compare election platforms from Canada's major parties with the Party Platform Tracker. And in the lead-up to the election, find out where the polls stand with Poll Tracker. Because this is your vote. Canada Votes 2025. Visit cbcnews.ca or download the free CBC News app.
Well, we are now just past the halfway point in the federal election campaign, and the debates are now looming large on the horizon. This week, many of the leaders campaigned in the West. There was more market chaos, as we continue to report, and then the U.S. did put that pause on some tariffs, as we know. For a closer look at how all of it played out and what was said on the campaign trail, Marco Vellotti is back, editor-in-chief of iPolitics. Hi, Marco.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being back with us. So why don't we start with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. This week, he seems to be trying to position himself as the leader who will be more tough on crime. How is his 3 strikes and you're out plan landing?
Yeah, so it's interesting to see, Pierre Poilievre focus on this during this time of the campaign. Obviously, an issue he's been very vocal on. The Conservatives, really even provincial, even in provincial governments, have said that Canada's bail laws are too loose, or allow repeat offenders off the hook. Our sentencing guidelines are too light, and that's why repeat offenders come back to the community, committing crimes, continue to terrorize Canadians. And they're saying what he would propose is if you commit 3 quote-unquote serious crimes, you're going to go to jail for life. This is kind of a callback to the former Harper government's minimum mandatory sentencing laws, some of which were struck down by the Supreme Court, but just the sense that judicial discretion needs to be restrained. We got to make sure that people who commit serious crimes are doing serious time. How's it landing? I guess it's meeting the expected kind of response. Mark Carney's been a bit dismissive about it, saying it was a reductionist approach to crime, saying a baseball analogy is not a policy. And Jagmeet Singh said, it doesn't deal with it. It doesn't address the kind of underlying root causes of crime. So he didn't think it was an appropriate policy move. But again, this is something the Conservatives have been harping on for quite some time. So I'm not surprised to see it reemerge in the campaign trail.
I just want listeners to know we have a full interview about this coming up after 7 o'clock. We're going to look more at where this may have come from. We're going to go to California and the States to talk about similar policy down south and compare it to what's been promised on the campaign trail. So that's coming up after 7. Next, let's continue talking about Poilievre on the campaign trail this week, being criticized for his treatment of the media and making headlines for crowd sizes. But if I may, Marco, I'm going to play you a clip from yesterday's show because we're going around to different ridings. We invite all candidates to join us. In the first riding we were in, Elmwood Transcona, the Conservative candidate didn't respond to 5 different requests on 5 different ways to try to have him on our program. But then we did have the Conservative candidate join us in Winnipeg West yesterday, and I asked him a little bit about this. So here's my question to Marty Morantz. Many Conservative candidates across the country are choosing not to speak to the media. I'm wondering why you're here.
You know what? I've always had a great relationship with the media in this community, and I enjoy talking to you, and it gives me an opportunity to talk to thousands of people that I might not be able to talk to just going door to door every day.
Are you facing pressure from the National Conservative campaign not to do interviews like this?
Not at all. No, not the slightest.
So I'm really curious. That was just yesterday on the show, so I wanted to play that for context. And of course, really thank you for Marty Morantz coming. Next week also, I can confirm, in Winnipeg South, we have the Conservative candidate coming. What's this looking like at the national level, though, in terms of what's being reported about Pierre Poilievre's treatment of the media?
Yeah, it's so interesting that we're once again talking with Conservatives at loggerheads with the media. We know that there was this tense relationship. I thought before the campaign started that things were kind of improving. Pierre Poilievre was clearly getting more comfortable. He was doing a lot more, media scrums or press conferences on the Hill with Parliament Hill reporters. But then I was kind of blindsided by the fact that they've been invited on the campaign trail with us. And just to clarify, when media travel with the Liberal campaign or NDP campaign, CBC and other outlets, we're paying good money to be on those buses, on those planes with them. It just allows us, ensures access from experienced reporters to those events. So the fact that they cut us off, the fact that we're doing this weird, you get some advance notice, kind of speaks to the fact that they feel like that relationship isn't one that needs that sort of treatment, or they, kind of don't really maybe see us as that important part of the campaign. But I think it does. For them, there is a bit of a risk that if you do this, you have this confrontational, contentious relationship with the media. People might draw those parallels to Donald Trump. And we know Donald Trump is a toxic brand in Canada. And we know that Pierre Poilievre's comparisons or perceived similarities hurt his popularity in this country. So do you want to make those comparisons? Do you want to make that easier for your opponents to attack you on? It seems like a risky move by the Conservatives. Let's just say that.
I just get stressed every time we get shut out, and we've tried because I really want to put forth all of the different views from all of the different parties on the air. That's fairness and balance. And when you're missing someone, people first of all might presume that you've chosen to miss them, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. So I'm so grateful when everyone does join us, because that's what democracy is, right? Let's move to Carney, because he had some missteps this week as well. He was campaigning in the West. How did it go for him?
Yeah, it was fascinating to hear what he was talking about. I had to check the TV a couple of times. This is the Liberal leader we're hearing talking about, getting big energy projects improved, getting making sure there's only one assessment that they have to go through, making the approval period 2 years as opposed to 5 years. These are really things that Conservatives have been campaigning on or focusing on since the past decade. And, they've been attacking the Trudeau environmental assessment law. So it's really interesting to see Mark Carney talk about that. I mean, the missteps haven't really hurt him so much. They've been kind of those political rookie mistakes. For example, he used an outdated term for Indigenous peoples when he was on the campaign trail. Are those things really going to hamper him? I think he got some tough questions about how he's going to handle, current environmental assessment laws, Indigenous consultations, environmental assessment rules with what he's proposing, and he kind of had to stick handle those. That might be a trickier thing for him to deal with than the occasional flub I think we've come to expect with Mark Carney. So, yeah, it wasn't a terrible week for him, but he faced some hard questions about, how this new energy or approach to energy file is going to gel with what the Liberals have been doing for the past decade.
And NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is facing uncomfortable questions about whether or not he expects to even win his seat. How would you characterize where he is in this race?
I like the way you characterize it. Uncomfortable. He is the leader of the NDP. In 2021, half the NDP caucus came from BC. He represents a riding smack in the heart of the Vancouver area, and polls show that he might lose that riding. He might finish third behind the Liberals and Conservatives. That's not the place you want to be as the leader of the NDP. I think it speaks to how this campaign has not gone well for them. They've been crowded out by the Liberals and Conservatives, and he is at serious risk of losing his seat, probably the only major party leader to be in that position. So, yeah, very uncomfortable times for the NDP leader right now.
All right, Marco, thank you very much. We'll talk again, of course.
Thanks for having me.
Marco Vellotti, he's been on quite regularly because, well, we're in a campaign. He's the editor-in-chief of iPolitics. We reached him this morning in Ottawa. We're coming up to 3 minutes to 7 a.m., and Heather Wells is off today. Lauren Donnelly is here, though, and has our morning headlines for Friday. Hi, Lauren. Oh, Lauren's not quite there yet. I'm going to do the forecast here. No rush, no worries. Fog patches, a little bit of fog downtown, but that bright sunshine underneath it. So that's nice. We're going to be sunny to start our day, 1 degree right now. We are this afternoon going to have increasing cloud, and then the winds are going to gust south 30 to 50. So we'll be windy today. We should mention that. Our daytime high is going to be 16 degrees. Looking ahead to the weekend, tomorrow's mainly sunny and a high of 18 degrees. Over in Brandon, mix of sun and cloud, a high of 15. You're also being affected by fog and cloud this morning, but that should dissipate. It's going to be windy there too, winds south 30 to 50. And then in Thompson today, sunny and increasing cloud near noon and a high of 11 degrees. Now it is time to go back to our news center and check in with what's happening with headlines. Hi, Lauren.
Good morning. This is the first federal election since the end of the pandemic, and on-campus advanced voting is an option once again. Advocates say that's a good thing because they're hoping for a higher turnout of eligible young voters. And it was a win for the Jets last night, one step closer to the top seed spot in the Western Conference. We'll have more highlights from the game, all coming up in your next local news after World Report.
All right, let's get into the commute here. Thanks very much, Lauren. We do have some challenges with fog that we've been called about. So Maria called Deacon's Corner, westbound, South Perimeter. Too much fog to see the sunrise this morning. We even had calls about fog within the city, and we have some downtown as well. So just to mention that could cause a problem on your commute. There's also something beautiful in it. In addition, in the city of Winnipeg, northbound Pembina at Stafford is down to one lane. You can't expect delays there. Call May on the commuter line if you need to update, 788-3093. In the next hour of Information Radio, Pierre Poilievre, as we've been hearing this half hour, says it's 3 strikes and you're out for repeat offenders. He says the new tough law on crime will also stop some of the most serious offenders from ever getting bail, probation, or parole. We're going to dig into this. As I mentioned, we're going to look at where this came from. We're going to look at how it works in other places. And we're also going to look at how it might land in Canada here. So stay tuned. That's right after 7 o'clock. In addition, horror humor in a cabin in the woods. Teens with MTYP's musical theater school are bringing the Evil Dead to life. Do you remember that movie back in the day? So stay tuned. Channelie Vidal has a special piece for us. And then we need to turn to serious matters. We are going to be talking about some statistics which are troubling, and they're local. According to Statistics Canada, Manitoba has one of the highest rates of teen dating violence. Now, despite this, experts say that resources are needed to help teens, and they're far and few between here. So we're going to hear what's missing, and that's all coming up with some analysis as well. Right now, the World Report at 7.
on The Current.
Right now, China's paying a 104% tariff. Think of it, 104%.
Canada has enough to worry about when it comes to U.S. tariffs, but a brewing trade war between the United States and China isn't going to help. What it means for the global economy when two powerhouse nations face off, that's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. China is escalating its trade war with the United States. Starting tomorrow, Beijing will impose a 125% tariff on American goods. It follows the Trump administration's 145% duty on China. This trade fight between the world's two biggest economies is creating concern in Asian stock markets and some worry on the streets of Beijing. Patrick Falk reports.
In the Chinese capital, fears about the impact of tariffs and tensions between Washington and Beijing are heightening. One resident named Li says people from both the US and China must be concerned about inflation. I hope the trade war can end as soon as possible because it does no good to people from either country, she says. But the standoff looks far from over. A statement by China's Tariff Commission today said if the US keeps imposing higher tariffs, it won't make economic sense and it will become a, quote, joke in the history of the world economy. It added China would ignore any increases by the US. There appears to be little likelihood of the two sides engaging with one another. China's announcement came as markets in the region closed for the week. Shanghai and Hong Kong reversed earlier losses on hopes Beijing will unleash stimulus in the coming days to offset the effects of the tariff fight. Patrick Falk for CBC News, Singapore.
The latest global tariff chaos means Mark Carney is back in Ottawa and back serving in his role as Prime Minister. Later this morning, he'll meet with senior ministers on his U.S.-Canada Relations Cabinet Committee. Let's go to Rafi Bouchikanian in our Parliamentary Bureau. Rafi, why is it important for Carney to convene this meeting today?
John, ostensibly, it's to deal with this week's tariff developments. Here's part of what Mark Carney was telling supporters yesterday evening in Hamilton about the state of Canada's relationship with the U.S.
This is a tragedy. We didn't ask for this. It's a tragedy, but it's a new reality. And the question is, how do we respond as a nation? We're responding with purpose and with force.
This is the third time in as many weeks Carney is officially interrupting his campaign and returning to Ottawa to put that Prime Minister hat on. What's unclear to me is exactly why today. When Carney did this on week 1, it was to respond to surprise tariffs. When he did it on week 2, it was to respond to auto tariffs. But this time, Carney himself has acknowledged Canada was not directly affected by the tariff announcements out of the White House this week. A cynic might say that looking prime ministerial has been working for him on this campaign, so he's just leaning into it.
So, Rafi, what are the other leaders going to be doing today?
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will be in St. Catharines for a news conference this morning. Jagmeet Singh is actually also back in Ottawa. He's expected to speak at a progressive summit held by the Broadband Institute. And finally, Yves-François Blanchet will be speaking about secularism for the first time this campaign, visiting one of those rare Montreal ridings his party holds, La Salle-Verdun, which the Bloc won in a by-election last fall.
Rafi Bouchikanian in Ottawa. Thanks, Rafi.
You're welcome.
More than 100 mayors and municipal leaders say they want to hear more about the environment in this campaign. They've sent a letter to all of the major federal party leaders. It lists 5 ideas to address climate change while defending Canada's economic sovereignty. The mayor of wildfire-torn Jasper, Alberta, Richard Ireland, is one of those who signed it.
Our experience provides an opportunity, we believe, to help awaken the country to the urgency of this problem and present what we see as municipal leaders as solutions.
Among the things they're calling for, a response and recovery strategy for climate disasters. Many young voters are echoing the call for the climate to be discussed more in this election. The CBC's Kwabena Oduro has been speaking to some who say they don't know who to support.
First-time voter Sacha Rohek-Grenier says, apart from the Green Party, no one is talking about the environment, so it's hard for her to decide where to put her vote.
A party's environmental framework demonstrates how much they care about my future, our future. So I think that the fact that they don't even have like a plan or a framework in place really speaks volumes.
Given all the rumbling south of the border, the economy has dominated the leaders' stump speeches and policy proposals. Concordia University political science professor Donnell Gill says environmental issues have taken a back seat.
Climate change is not a problem that's going away. Whoever sort of campaigns in a successful way to win this election, they're going to be dealing with, a very, very challenging issue with regards to the climate crisis, no matter what.
In 2019, a youth-driven campaign to force leaders into addressing climate change captured the attention and imagination of an entire generation. Concordia University PhD student Aspen Murray was at the protest in Montreal that gathered nearly 500,000 people.
I will never forget that moment and how it made me feel. I am disappointed by the fact that obviously there was a pandemic very soon that followed that. So I think it really squandered a lot of that progress and momentum.
So with time ticking away on the campaign clock, the parties have some catching up to do to convince environmentally minded voters to turn up and turn out on some issues that matter to them the most. Cubino Duro, CBC News, Montreal.
The preliminary hearing for Canadian billionaire Frank Stronach is set to begin this morning in Toronto. Stronach founded auto parts giant Magna International. Now he is facing more than a dozen sex crime charges from 13 different complainants, with some accusations dating back almost half a century. Lisa Shing reports.
In Toronto alone, Frank Stronach is facing 11 charges by 7 complainants, including for rape, sexual assault, and forcible confinement, dating back to 1977. Now, with the preliminary hearing scheduled to start, the court will hear evidence that will determine whether the case will go to trial. Trevin David is a criminal defense lawyer not related to the proceedings.
This is often the first time to see how the evidence is tested on both sides.
The 92-year-old billionaire founded auto parts maker Magna in the 1950s. Some of the alleged incidents date back to his time as CEO, spanning several cities. One woman who spoke with CBC's The Fifth Estate last year is among the accusers in the Toronto case. Her identity was kept confidential.
He took away my fire. I had let it fester for a really long time.
She says it took her 35 years to come forward to police, and even after she did, another decade passed before police laid charges when new allegations surfaced. The Fifth Estate also spoke with Stronach, who denies the allegations.
We have a lot of data which totally, will prove that those things are lies.
Stronach is set to face another 6 sex crime charges from 6 other complainants in a Newmarket, Ontario court next year. The most recent incident allegedly happened last year. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The United States diplomatic envoy is in Moscow, but the White House isn't confirming why Steve Witkoff is in Russia. His visit comes as military leaders from 50 countries, including Canada, are meeting in Brussels with the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Anna Cunningham has more.
2025 is the critical year for the war in Ukraine.
British Defence Secretary John Healey says unity amongst Ukraine's allies is crucial.
Today is 1 month to the day in which Russia rejected President Trump's peace settlement.
The US usually chairs this regular meeting of Allied defence staff and military chiefs, but in Brussels today it was Britain and Germany who led the meeting. US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth opting to dial in virtually. Canada is at the table. Chief of Defence Staff General Jenny Carignan attending, along with the permanent representative to NATO, Ambassador Heidi Hulan.
Peace in Ukraine appears to be out of reach in the immediate future,
says Boris Pistorius, Germany's defence minister. The US appears to be prioritising its relations with Russia. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff now reportedly waiting in Russia to see if he's permitted a meeting with President Vladimir Putin, leaving Ukraine's other allies to reinforce support for Kyiv.
We will ensure that Ukraine continues to benefit from our joint military support.
Those allies today pledging over $33 billion in extra military aid for Ukraine. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
And finally, an update on a story we brought you yesterday about Christopher Griffin, the artist in residence at UPEI, who quit that job rather than agree to take down a controversial painting. It was a parody of the famed Washington crossing the Delaware, showing a group of lemmings in a boat carrying an American flag. Today, the school says it has directly apologized to Griffin and offered to reinstall his painting in a prominent campus location as part of the school's commitment to free speech. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, here we are on Friday with at the end of what feels like a really long week. I think it's that spring break effect. First week the kids have been back. We're going to head to a wonderful high of 16 today in Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us to start your day. We're starting with some sunshine as well. That will change, though. Abby will tell us about that in a sec. You're with Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. My name is Marcy Marcusa. This hour on the program, we have troubling statistics that we need to try and understand. According to Statistics Canada, Manitoba has one of the highest rates of teen dating violence. Now, despite that, experts say the resources needed to help teenagers escape abuse are far and few between. We're going to talk about the stats. We're going to talk about what's missing. We have some analysis coming up just before 8. But we start talking about Pierre Poilievre, saying it's 3 strikes and you're out for repeat offenders. He says a tough new law on crime would also stop some of the most serious offenders from ever getting bail, probation, or parole. But will it work? And where does this come from? Where has this law been enacted in other places in North America or something similar? And how could this compare for better or worse? So we're going to have a bit of a check on this proposal. Right now, 7-Eleven is the time, and maybe also the place you're going to get a Slurpee later. I know, I'm on at 8. Let's right now, though, go for headlines to Lauren Donnelly, who's here to update the news. Good morning.
Good morning. The northern riding of Churchill-Kiiwetinoong is one of the largest in terms of First Nations voters. Candidates are racing to visit as many communities as possible before the vote on April 28th. We'll hear from some folks in that riding on which issues they're hoping to see addressed. And advanced polls are returning to Manitoba campuses after being scrapped in 2021 due to the pandemic. Elections Canada found in that campaign fewer than half of young adults cast a ballot. One newcomer says she wishes it was easier to find information about how to vote. CBC's Matt Humphrey has more on that story coming up. Your next local news is at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
It is time to check in with that forecast now. Abby?
Some hot dog to go with those Slurpees, just saying. Right now, across the board, we're looking at sunny conditions across the regions. We're off to a sunny start in the city. Some clouds will sneak in this afternoon. Right now in Winnipeg, it is a clear start to your Friday. Temperatures hugging 0 and -1. Fog patches spotted in some areas. The airport is reporting freezing fog at this time. Those foggy conditions will be clearing off pretty quickly, and then it gets breezy as we get into the day. We're warming up nicely to a high of 16. Not too hot, not too cold, just I call it for a fall stroll.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Spring, though, man. Spring stroll. Fall's behind us. Winter's behind us. Well, not quite. We're close. Okay, we are getting a lot of calls because the fog is actually ruining the party.
It is.
May.
And I like to think that this is the last of winter and it's on its way out, and we're going to get those high temperatures later today and not have to think about the cold days. It was a little frosty this morning on my windshield, I won't lie, when I had to get into my car, but I've been hearing about that fog, and I'm curious if you're out on the highways, if you're in the city or maybe on the perimeter, what you're seeing out there. Give us a call. We heard about Deacon's Corner from Maria on southbound perimeter. She was heading westbound. She said there was lots of fogs in that area, as well as St. Vital. Also, we got a call from Dan on a bike. A reminder for people who may be pulling out their bikes. It's spring. People are starting to commute in different sorts of ways. So watch out for gravel, he said, on sidewalks or on the main roads. Often this time of year, there's lots of gravel that can get under your tires, and that's not a fun thing to spin out with. The other call that I got, the last note that I have to share, is westbound McGilvery at Pembina. Phil called to say that it is closed for construction, and you can detour through Clarence. That's all so far. But it's an active show, active day out there on the commute. Give me a call. Anything that you're seeing, a stalled car, anyone getting in your way, maybe on your bike and you're meeting some gravel, as Dan suggested you might, give us a call and let us know, and I'll pass that message along. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
So let's dig into what the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, announced, this new law that I alluded to about how he's going to be tougher on repeat offenders. Poilievre proposed what he's calling the 3 strikes and you're out law. It would stop those convicted, as I've said, of 3 serious offenses from getting bail, probation, parole, or even house arrest. So repeat offenders would also be required to serve a minimum sentence of 10 years to life for their 3rd offense. He says release should only be possible if offenders demonstrate, quote, spotless behavior, produce a clean drug test, and learn a trade or get education while in prison. So academics who study these issues say Poilievre is proposing American-style policies that are not only cruel but ineffective. Michael Weinrath is here to talk about the proposed law. He's a criminology professor at the University of Winnipeg. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what are your thoughts on this type of a law being proposed, just overall, when you heard it come forward?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a blast from the past, although, perhaps there's not as many original ideas in the justice system as we think. Yeah, but the 3 strikes law is affiliated with the state of California, which was one of the first U.S. states in the late 70s, 80s to pass these mandatory sentencing laws. And I remember living through that. And so the United States went from, a relatively middle-of-the-road incarceration rate to become the world leader in imprisoning people. So it had a huge impact on the number of people who were incarcerated. There were a number of studies that were done and have been done on that law and similar types of laws. And, it never actually affected the crime rate significantly. And so, to be honest, I was actually a bit surprised, because if you lock enough people up long enough, you'd think it would have some significant effect on the crime rate. But it didn't really have very much of an effect on the crime rate. But the number of people incarcerated, as I've said, skyrocketed, and the U.S. became the world leader by a significant margin.
So let me interject there, because you used the word that you were surprised. You think that it would have an effect on the crime rate. I think that even people that might support a tougher law, and there are many people that are saying, look, we have to do something about repeat offenders. So is there a sense of why it didn't have an effect on the crime rate, or what else can we learn from what happened in California and in the States?
Yeah, well, the argument is that in some cases, a lot of people will get longer sentences who are, serious offenders, right? Because, and again, we can see even just, reading the Free Press or listening to the CBC News, some people get long sentences who have committed serious crimes and have serious criminal histories, right? So some of that is, longer sentences are happening already. And again, the causes of crime, right, are, external. And deterrence, historically has worked perhaps for you or me, but for people, who are born in poverty, people who are repeat offenders, they tend not to think very much about consequences. They tend to live a daring lifestyle. And so longer sentences don't really intimidate them. And so the psychology of offenders, and again, all these other, causes of crime that we have, impoverished situations, people growing up in difficult family situations, or not having family support, or being in care. All those things are important to address if you want to reduce the crime rate.
What are some other ways that the tough on crime method could be addressed for those that are saying, okay, fine, we have to do something though,
Yes, and the long haul sort of thing doesn't really entice people significantly, and I would say though that if you look at our parole system. Right, when Poilievre says, "Oh, well, they should be learning a trade, or making an effort to have a spotless record." Well, the parole system. 1 in 3 people who apply for parole get parole, so it's actually a pretty tough system, and the success rates are significant in terms of new crimes. Of course, we hear about it when there is a crime, but that's not necessarily new. Eventually somebody on probation, or somebody on bail, or somebody on parole or statutory, they're going to offend. But the majority of people, like it's actually been in the 90s in terms of people who complete, parole, day parole, and don't reoffend. So, the system that we have actually for serious offenders does not work badly. But I think, you have to think about the consequences of locking up more people longer. So if we're not going to get very much out of it, you're spending suddenly billions of dollars. Look at the United States, reached a point in the 90s they were spending more money on their prisons than on their colleges and universities. And surely that's not something that we want to see for Canada.
Polyev references, though, some examples where people are really sort of, it's hard to argue against some of these examples. I mean, he referenced murders that happened in 2022. I know you heard this probably in the announcement. That's where, the individual was out of prison on statutory release at the time of his crime spree, individual with a long record. I think people sort of wonder whether or not if you don't want to, if it's not the right way to go, Michael Weinrath, with, as you're saying, spending more money on prisons than on colleges, and it's not really rehabilitating anybody. No one benefits. We're just packing our prisons, having more people locked up. But then is that the cost then that some people will slip through? Or, I think people are trying to frame then what do you do with that kind of an example?
Well, it's kind of a mug's game, though, isn't it? Because again, I can sit back and say, hey, there's somebody who reoffended on probation. Right? And so what happens then? Well, then, look back at the judges. Look, people will get out of prison eventually. If we don't want them to, then we have to invest ridiculous amounts of money into the prison system. So again, I think, trying to improve some of the programs and the availability of programs in prison is certainly, one thing to do. But we have to invest, I think, in people. And I'd rather see that sort of investment than an investment in more prisons. So trying to help, keep families in difficult circumstances together, trying to have less kids in care. And, and actually it sounds trivial, but I think these breakfast lunch programs in schools, I think they're really important for kids in difficult circumstances, that they want to come to school, that there's something positive that they can focus on learning.
It's interesting because we have the Premier on after 8 o'clock, and we're going to ask him about the 5-year anniversary of Aisha Hudson. She was shot and killed by police. She was 16 years old. Police say that she was involved in driving a stolen vehicle, that had been involved in a robbery. There's an inquest now into what's happening. But I'm raising this only because we had the child advocate on earlier this week, and one of the things we'll ask the Premier about is what Sherry Gott had to say on CBC, which was there were some supports and resources for Aisha Hudson up to when she was 15, and then those ended. So those were supports she's arguing should extend further into a young person's life. So it kind of what you're talking about resources, making sure people have the supports that they need. Young people, this is young people specifically, but to not get involved maybe in the system or to stay uninvolved in the system is very much top of mind in this province right now.
Yeah, I think those things, are important. That we have too many kids in care, and we need to give them a lot of support. And yeah, they grow up, having had limited success in a variety of social spheres, including the school, and so transitioning out of care, right, like when they're 18, and a lot of them then end up, falling through cracks, becoming homeless, drug addicted. So again, you want to invest in people, not prisons.
What have you heard on the campaign trail otherwise from some of the other promises from political parties in terms of being tough on crime that's stood out for you?
Yeah, again, generally, you get a lot of the, the more general, we would change laws and be tougher in some of the areas. But again, people are very traditional in the sense of the NDP talking a lot about, being tough on the causes of crime. Mm-hmm. And, in the end, a lot of people are staying close to their traditional messages. The Conservatives, very much, always having been tough on crime, and the Liberals being a little bit more middle of the road. Yeah, the Conservatives, though, I would say that I'm a little bit surprised that Polyev seems to come up with a lot of American policies and American slogans. I don't think that's particularly helping him on his campaign.
Thank you very much for being here, Michael, to walk us through this, and also the context from the United States and California with that similar laws is very interesting. We appreciate you bringing it to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Marcy.
That's Michael Weinrath, criminology professor at the University of Winnipeg. Time right now is 7:24.
There's a lot of noise out there. What is real? What is false? CBC News is here for Canadians, sifting through the noise to help you make your best choice. Because this is your vote. Canada Votes 2025. Everywhere you get CBC News.
Still ahead on Information Radio this morning right here on CBC. Coming up after your news at 7:30, we are going to be hearing about a groovy time. That is, until your friends turn into demons and want you to join them.
It's not quite what we planned, but now we've got your hand.
That's a little bit of a performance from some local teens who are performing a high school version of Evil Dead, the musical. So stay tuned. We're going to hear more about it. That's coming up after your news. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Freezing fog at the airport. It's -1 right now. And you're with CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. It's time for sports. Scott Reguer joins us for Friday morning here. Good morning.
Is that elementary school or is that high school?
Let me look back. Hang on.
I'm just saying, because when I was in my school age days, it was Wizard of Oz. Now we've moved on to the Evil Dead. Things are a little more creative than they once were.
This is teenagers. This is Manitoba Theatre for young people.
Okay, I feel a little bit better about it then if it's at least
I'm just trying to confirm the age. So it is a high school version, but sometimes overall in that theater there's younger performances. So yeah, we're a long way from your happy days, man. Things are deep in 2025.
No, are they ever? Too deep in some regards, but there you are.
Yeah, there's that.
Sports.
All right, sports. Let's talk another big win for the Jets last night, hey?
Yeah, 4-0 over the Stars in Dallas. Among the goal scorers, Kyle Connor, he had 2, so he's hit the 40 mark for the second time in his career. Tough to look past Connor Hellebuck, though, Marcy, and the incredible season he has had. That's his 8th shutout of the season, so he's a virtual lock for the Vezina Trophy as the best goalie in the league. He has a solid argument, very solid argument, for the Hart Trophy as the most valuable player outright, so that'll be something to watch. But, of course, this is about the collective, and as a team, the Jets, with that winner, just 1 point away. That's the magic number, 1. Any combination of a win by them or a loss by Dallas, and they're going to win that Central Division title for the first time ever. Head coach Scott Arniel says the fact they've had to wait so long into the season to possibly clinch can only bode well for the team.
Maybe the one thing that's kind of happening here with Dallas right on our tail is that we have to play this same sort of heavy, hard hockey that we have to play starting in game 83, and it's kind of kept us sharp right to the end here. So would like it maybe if it was we had things squared away, but at the end of the day, just the guys are recognizing we have to take care of our business. We're not waiting for other things to happen around the league. We have to take care of our business. Let's win our hockey games.
Yeah, and if they win tomorrow night against Chicago, division clinched. Maybe they could rest a couple of their stars for a game or two, but we'll see.
That sure would be nice. Meantime, it was a winning start for Canada at the World Women's Hockey Championship.
Yeah, and a newcomer to the event, Marcy, was largely to credit for that. Vancouver's Jennifer Gardner. She had 2 goals and an assist in what ended up a 5-0 victory over Finland. Gardner did have help, mind you. She plays on Canada's top line with Laura Stacey and Marie-Philippe Poulin, who have long established chemistry. They are married, after all. Another standout debutante, Brandon native goalie Kristen Campbell, who made 24 stops for the shutout. Here's her teammate Ella Shelton.
I think there is some good that we can take away from that game and build off it and take it into the next one. And Soupy came out big and some big saves there for us. And I think it just shows the confidence that she has in us. And, vice versa. If we play well in front of her, then there's no reason why she shouldn't have a goal against.
Soupy, also the nickname of NHL goalie Jack Campbell. No one said hockey players were original. And if you're wondering who the backup to Kristen Campbell is, that's Yves Gascon, who is yet to turn pro. So I think we're going to see Kristen Campbell back in net in about an hour when Canada plays Switzerland.
And to golf, where an Englishman stole the show at day 1 of the Masters.
Yeah, Justin Rose, whose opening round was 3 shots better than anyone else in the field. A veteran of the tour, Rose has come close at Augusta before, twice finishing in second place. But he says his performance yesterday felt different.
Felt like a bit of a no-hitter there for a while. Like everything was just going my way. I was kind of navigating the tough holes really well. And that's what's inspiring me to keep playing, keep practicing, keep working hard, keep, all the sacrifices that are required to be away from the family are for playing well in major championships and that dream that I can still win one of these things or a couple of them, or more than a couple, who knows.
bloom is not off the rose yet. Justin Rose, 3 shots ahead of a group that includes defending champion Scotty Scheffler and Canadian Corey Connors. Connors obviously would love to win a second green jacket for this country after Mike Weir, who is 3 over par, by the way. And for those of you who, like me, Marcy, will be too busy driving kids to and from their own sporting events this weekend, I will leave you with this. That is from Augusta National Golf Club's YouTube channel. It's called Naturescapes.
Really?
There's not actually birds on the course. If you talk to anybody going to the Masters, right? And I think it's, I won't speculate why, but anyway, you can actually go to their YouTube channel. You can listen to that. And I'm an old enough man now. That could be a highlight of my weekend.
Why do you and I, we like to talk about the Masters. Every year we go crazy talking about the tone of the Masters. It's so fun. All right, take care. Enjoy your driving around the kids with your Naturescapes, and we'll talk to you on Monday.
Yeah, you betcha. See ya.
Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg at 7:30. It's clear and -2 with freezing fog at the airport. Sunny today, increasing cloudiness this afternoon, windy with a high of 16 degrees. This is the first federal election since the end of the pandemic, and on-campus advance voting is an option once again. Elections Canada data shows fewer than half of eligible young voters cast a ballot in 2021. But as Matt Humphrey reports, it could be many more this time around.
The students we spoke with at the University of Winnipeg are plugged in.
Look at policies. Don't go by emotions, go by policies.
Soban Faze wanted to hear from the parties firsthand.
Went to the Pierre Poilievre rally, went to the Carney rally, met a bunch of candidates.
Muskan Bora just got her citizenship, but with a busy exam season, she wishes information on how to vote was more clear.
I tried figuring out how to vote, but it's complex. I wish there was a way. It was made easy for newcomers.
Amanda Monday runs New Majority, a national nonprofit trying to get more young people to vote. She expects higher turnout with the return of on-campus voting and with young people feeling patriotic.
This 51st state rhetoric is showing up in more people's social media feeds than regular election political content would.
On-campus voting starts next week. Matt Humphrey, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Federal election candidates are racing the clock to reach as many voters as possible in northern Manitoba. Infrastructure, education, cost of living, and healthcare are some of the top issues for candidates and voters in Churchill, Kiiwetinoong. Erica Hallcrow regularly drives 8 hours from Pimicikamak to Winnipeg for medical appointments. She's glad to see candidates talking about healthcare.
It affected me personally, yes, because I go out for medical, and a lot of times I have issues and I can't address them right away, and I really don't know where to address them.
Voter turnout in the riding was 36% last election and has been held by the NDP's Nikki Ashton for 17 years. She's challenged this election by Liberal Rebecca Chartrand. Dylan Young is running for the PPC and Lachlan Denardi for the Conservatives. A Winnipeg-born gynecologist says the actions of Donald Trump are driving her home. Dr. Jen Gunter, an outspoken advocate for women's health, has lived in the United States for 3 decades. Now she's moving back to Canada. The OB-GYN has watched as reproductive rights have been gradually curtailed for years, so she isn't entirely surprised by the Trump administration.
I've been watching this kind of erosion. So for me, I feel a lower level of tolerance for everything that's happening now, because to me, it's been this complete progression. This isn't as much of a shock.
Gunter says she has a lot of concerns around healthcare in the States, like programs being slashed and grant funding being cut. She's planning to continue living on the West Coast when she moves to Canada. Germany and the United Kingdom are pledging new military support for Ukraine to defend against Russian troops. British Defence Minister John Healey announced a new contribution worth more than $630 million. He says it will help buy radar systems, anti-tank mines, and drones.
2025 is the critical year for the war in Ukraine, and this is the critical moment. A moment for our defence industries to step up, and they are. A moment for our militaries to step up, and they are. A moment for our governments to step up, and we are.
He made that announcement at a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group this morning in Brussels. Canada is among the 50 countries attending those talks. They come as Ukraine says Russia launched dozens of drones and a ballistic missile at its territory overnight. Most were either shot down or did not reach their targets. Finally, another win for Winnipeg and a step closer to the top seed spot in the Western Conference. The Jets took on the second-place Dallas Stars last night and soared their way to a shutout victory. Nino Niederreiter and Morgan Barron opened the scoring, and Kyle Connor closed it off with 2 third-period goals, starting with this one.
Beck hits the brakes, didn't have the angle, and then fed it to the slot where retreating back Iafallo pushed ahead. Connor has a step, forehand, he scores.
That courtesy of Sportsnet. Connor Hellebuck stopped 24 shots. It was his single-season franchise record 45th win and NHL leading 8th shutout. The Jets play the Blackhawks in Chicago tomorrow. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right, thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Marcy.
Lauren Donnelly's over in our news center live this morning. Well, we're about to get into the forecast, Abby, and I got to say I had this moment with my socks this morning.
Oh.
So I was putting on my sneakers, and then I'm like, oh, well, I went for my short socks that, don't show. And ever since that article on CBC about how Gen Xers like myself don't wear the right socks, I've been ruined. I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know if I wear short socks. I've never been a fan of ankle socks, but am I supposed to wear colorful, taller socks? Like, I had some serious sock stress today.
I know that feeling, Marcy.
Can I ask?
Especially when it's the change of the season. I know that feeling.
Right? Yeah.
How do you choose? What
So
did you choose today?
May is in. Well, I chose the short sock, but I figure that I'm okay with being identified as an old lady, but I don't know.
I choose the one that the dryer did not swallow.
There you go.
What do you do when you wear short sneakers? May McKillop?
Well, you have me thinking now, and my pants today are a little bit short, and I have a tall socks.
You
not
have the tall
super tall,
sock?
but there's a little skin coming out. It's not fun in this weather.
For those of you that didn't read that article back in the day, go back and Google it. You know why generations are divided over the sock. Yeah.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Are you a mismatched sock person, or is that a no for you?
Oh, no, I always mismatch. I'm a total mismatch. I'm like, these are good. But I don't like when they're showing mismatched, though. I usually do if I'm wearing a longer
There you
pant,
go.
though.
Those
yeah.
are the Sunday ones.
Yeah, and then you cross your leg anyway, and then people can see it because your pant moves up. But, yeah, I call that creative if someone
It's
sees
being
it.
creative, Marcy.
Yeah. All right, you're going to be choosing today what you're going to be wearing, and we're talking about it because our temperature daytime high in Winnipeg is going to be really high compared to what it's been, Abby. What's the forecast?
Yeah, it's a mixed mash today. We're looking at sunshine, cloudy condition, foggy conditions, and maybe rain in some areas as you travel north. For the Red River Valley region, we're looking at temperatures around 0 and -1 at this time in Winnipeg. And we are reporting freezing fog at the airport and also around the perimeter. Sunshine will give way to clouds later in the afternoon. We then warm up to a comfortable 16 degrees. Tonight, we will see some clear skies, and I call it a perfect, cozy evening. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region. 2 degrees right now. The sun has made its appearance already, so if you're in the regions close to the U.S. border, you should be enjoying some sunshine at this time, but you'll be greeted by fog on the highway. Clouds will roll in this afternoon. Breezy conditions will peak up, warming up to 17 today. In western Manitoba, Brandon, surrounding regions, chilly at -1. Partly cloudy skies you do have now. However, the sun is trying to make its way out this morning. Then you'd see the clouds again try to fight for its spot as the day goes on. You will warm to 15 by the afternoon. In the Parkland region, we're looking at sunny conditions already at this time. 7 degrees in Dauphin. Expect some clouds to also fight for a spot with breezy conditions later today. High will be around 13 degrees. In Gimli, chilly, -1. That's your start for this period. Sunshine will turn into clouds. There's a chance of rain later in the day. High will also be around 15. You get some breezy conditions this afternoon. It's cloudy in the powerful influence surrounding areas. You should see these cloudy conditions clear. Temperatures around -1 at this time. You're warming up to 10 degrees. And then in Thompson, -4. Clear skies. The clouds will roll in this afternoon. You already have sunshine in Thompson and Churchill. both regions seeing temperatures click on -4 at this time, and we'll see highs of 11 in Thompson, and then highs of -2 is expected in Churchill. So across board, Marcy, we are like a mix of sun, clouds, rain here and there, and freezing fog.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And to the morning commute now. May is here to update us on what she's been hearing on the line.
We were hearing about some fog earlier in the show. I imagine a lot of that is cleared, but I'm curious if it's out on the highways or anything. If the fog's getting in the way of your commute, give me a call. Also, we got a nice spring reminder from Dan on a Bike for people who may be pulling out their bikes for the first time in the season. Watch out for gravel on the sidewalks or roads, he mentioned. Often it's still there, left over from the winter. As well, westbound McGilvery at Pembina, I'm hearing about a road closure for construction. Expect delays in the area or plan an alternative route. As well, looking at Waverley approaching Grant, there's a stalled vehicle blocking the northbound middle lane. So use caution when passing there. And let me know about anything else getting in the way of your commute. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, May. 20 to 8 now on your Friday morning. And next on the show, let me set the scene for you. It's a groovy time at a cabin in the woods until a demonic spirit spoils the party. Evil Dead, the musical, is based on the plot of the cult classic movie series. The production combines horror, humor, and a lot of camp. Who doesn't love a campy performance? Teen performers over at the Manitoba Theatre for Young People's Musical Theatre Company are performing the high school version of the show this weekend. And on this Friday morning, CBC Manitoba's community reporter Shanley Vidal takes us to a rehearsal.
Your life sucks, you know, working as smart's gotta blow. Don't be just a lazy schmo and join us. You'll be dead with no remorse and be strong like a horse. You can even date a corpse if you join us.
My name is Amalia Hickerson, I'm 16 and I'm playing Ash Williams. I've loved this musical since I was in grade 7 and I'm in grade 11 now. And Ash has kind of been one of my dream roles and I never thought I'd get to play him this early on in my life.
No! No, I'm not gonna join you! Never!
Him and his friends go on a week-long vacation in a cabin in the woods and they break in and it does not go as planned.
Why don't you just accept your fate and join us, Ashley? Join us!
That scene that you performed for us. Come join us. Tell me what was happening.
Well, at that point, my sister Cheryl, who you saw in the cellar, has turned evil and is trying to convince me to join the Deadites.
My name is Tessa Leverett. I am 18 years old and I am in the ensemble. I'm an evil tree, I'm a demon, I'm a customer in every scene, I'm backstage helping with blood, like there's so much going on.
Do you have a soft spot for horror or like, no?
No, I can't get through a horror film.
You will die! Nightmares before you. One by one we will take you.
We actually got together as a cast to watch some of the movies and I'm like kind of in the corner with my headphones, a little scared.
How is it for you being part of the horror?
It's so different when you're behind the scenes making the horror happen. Just being able to play with blood. It's not scary when it's in your hands, but when you're watching other people, when I'm watching my castmates get killed and turned into demons, it's a little scary. But when it happens to you, it's fun.
Try and take a stand, but we have got your hand. What are you talking about?
You're just beaming when you talk about, being a demon and being in this musical. What do you love most about it?
Oh, it's the people. It's truly the people. We're together 6 hours a week for months and months, and just coming and seeing everyone, I've just made lifelong friendships.
Hi, I'm Spencer Payne. I'm the school director here at M2IP.
Well, someone hasn't been watching the Discovery Channel. Everyone knows once Moose gets singing, they never shut up.
We never shut up.
That's it! I'm getting Linda and we are getting out of here!
I just wanted to create a lot of fun, and I don't actually know any more musical that's more fun than a play about kind of zombies, right? Or evil demons. So that's why we chose it. It's campy, fun, it adds elements of puppetry, which is a really good theater skill. It's a great lesson in comedy, and as you can see, the music is really fun.
Why do you keep saying that?
I didn't realize myself that there was a high school version. So I think some people might have been surprised.
Yeah, well, actually, if you listen to the adult version, it's very inappropriate for teenagers. But it was just released this last year, so we might be the first ones in Winnipeg to have a go at it. And I took a read of it, and I think it's actually more fun as a teenager. It takes a lot. It puts it more in our current setting, and it's clean, which is so fascinating, except for, the blood and the guts and the killing and the chopping limbs off, but yeah.
Fair warning, there's going to be a lot of fake blood on stage. For a more immersive experience, you can sit in the splash zone, but don't worry, that stuff is just water.
We've got your hand, yes, it's true, we've got your hand. Yes, we finally got your hand to join us.
Shanley Vidal, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The musical high school version is on tonight through Sunday at MTYP. And remember to wear something appropriate if you're sitting in the splash zone.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
Still ahead this half hour on the program, we are going to be talking about new stats that say that Manitoba has one of the highest rates of teen dating violence. And despite that, experts say resources need to help teens escape abuse are far and few between. So stay tuned. We'll have that interview in a couple of minutes from now. But right now we have music from Fox Warren, a group that includes actually a Winnipegger in it. They're back with a new album. It's their first group project since their debut album back in 2018. The quintet went on a hiatus as frontman Andy Shaw released music as a solo artist. But now, as I said, they're back. This is from the upcoming sophomore release called 2. The track's Listen to Me.
It's almost like you never listen to me when I'm speaking. You should listen to me. It's almost like you never listen to me when I'm speaking. You should listen to me. I know I'm not some movie star, setting some big script. But if you open your mind, I might be able to tell you something. It's almost like you never listen to me when I'm speaking. You should listen to me. It's almost like you never listen to me when I'm speaking. You should listen to me. And no, I've not been listening to what you've been saying. I have my own words prepared. I'll put you right back where you belong. Though I have no formal training on the current subject, once I open my mouth, you'll see how sharp I really am.
We are listening to Fox Warren. Creative, cool music, huh? Kind of changed tempo there. I didn't see that coming. This is their new track. It's called Listen to Me. Their album 2 is due out May 30th. 11 minutes now to 8 o'clock.
Canadians are having an election. Who will be prime minister? Just help me reconcile this.
Zero tariffs or nothing.
It is a betrayal.
Tired of the chaos, just like everyone else.
David Cochran for Power and Politics, today at 5 p.m. Eastern on CBC News Network.
It is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock on CBC. It is -1 in Winnipeg. We've had some calls about fog, and we did just get a call on our commuter line. There is something the caller said in progress around Redwood Bridge. Not a lot of detail there. We understand there are police heading to the area. There are cars on the bridge. There are some vehicles, though, that are on Main Street, and they're being having to turn around. Cars that would be going to take the Redwood over to Main, they're having to turn back around and stay on Henderson. So there's something in progress there. We have very little detail, but if you have something to add to the commuter line, please update us, 788-3093, and we will pass that along on the air. Right now, though, probably best to avoid the area. Next on the show, often when we discuss intimate partner violence, you might be thinking about adults, but some researchers say that many teenagers are experiencing violence in their romantic relationships, and it often goes under the radar. Calgary-based psychologist Dr. Danara Exner, Cortens, specializes in violence prevention and healthy relationships in youth. And in 2021, she co-authored a study that looked at teen dating and violence across the country. She found that at least 1 in 3 Canadian teens, 1 in 3, say they've experienced abuse or violence while dating. And she says in provinces with high rates of domestic violence like Manitoba, that stat is only exacerbated. So we're not faring well when it comes to these stats. Let's find out more from her. She joins us now via Zoom. Good morning.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So when we talk about partner violence in teens, can you sort of give us sort of what specifically the scope is of what we're discussing here and what kind of ages we're talking about?
So unfortunately, dating violence can start as soon as kids start dating, which could be as early as grade 6, so around age 11. We know by age 15, about 50% of youth have had some type of dating relationship, and those relationships may not look like adult relationships. They tend to be shorter, for example, but that doesn't mean they don't have big developmental impacts. Those can be really positive, but in cases where there's violence or aggression in the relationship, obviously that can also have long-lasting negative impacts. So when we talk about teen dating violence, we're really talking about kids in the age range 11 to 17. In terms of the types... Oh, sorry.
Please. No, continue, please.
Yeah, in terms of the types of behavior, it's similar if you're familiar with adult domestic or intimate partner violence. So psychological forms of aggression, name-calling, trying to control a partner, insulting, belittling, physical forms of aggression, sexual, so any unwanted sexual activity or where a victim is not able to or does not consent, as well as stalking behavior, so monitoring behavior that would cause fear. The key difference is that adolescents are not adults, and so developmentally, their needs are really different. The reasons for use of violence can be different. And so even if the behaviors looked similar, we really need to treat them as youth and not many adults.
What are the reasons for the use of violence being different in teens? What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate on that? Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So in teens, they're still really undergoing very rapid cognitive changes. And so that means there can be heightened emotions. They can react more strongly to emotional situations. They're more sensitive to people's facial expressions, things like that. It's not that they can't control their behavior, it's just harder. And so we think some of the aggression we see in teens is due to that. But like with adults, some of it is due to power and control dynamics as well. So where one partner is using violence in order to control another partner. But again, because they're still very much learning what it is to be in a romantic relationship, there's, I would say, additional opportunities for intervention, regardless of the reasons why the violence is being used, in order to hopefully help them learn to negotiate conflict in healthier ways, to not use power to hurt and harm others before they get to adulthood.
I alluded to the stats here being troubling because according to Statistics Canada, Manitoba has one of the highest rates of teen dating violence. What do we do about it? What supports actually get to the root of this and can help teenagers specifically?
Mm-hmm. And I will say the statistics you're talking about are just police reported incidents. That's really the tip of the iceberg. We're not picking up a lot of those behaviors that can still be really harmful, but wouldn't rise to the level of, say, criminal charges. But yes, Manitoba, among the provinces, does have one of the highest rates of police reported teen dating violence for 15 to 17-year-olds, especially in the rural north. And so in cases where we're talking about violence that rises to this level, we're really talking about dedicated supports for folks who are experiencing violence as well as those who are using it. So more one-on-one intervention or group work, usually led by a licensed clinician. But more broadly, obviously, we don't want kids to get to the point where they're having to file charges or work with the police. And so what we can do at more of a universal level, so for all youth, is really make sure that in schools, in particular, since that's where most youth are most of the time, we are offering healthy relationships education. So romantic relationships are a new world for youth, and they need to learn about relationships just like anything else. And, without that teaching, they're basing it, based on what they say in the media or in the community. And so we want to really give them a sense of what relationships can be like, figure out for themselves what their own needs and boundaries are. And so that's really a lot of school-based curriculum, as well as parents, caregivers, families, community members, really supporting youth, listening to them if they're worried that something's wrong, and getting them to resources.
What are some of the specific risk factors that might make a teenager more likely to perpetrate violence? Like, is it learned behavior?
Yeah, I think there's definitely evidence that some of it is what we might call social learning. So seeing it modeled in different places. Obviously, how do we learn to be in relationships? We learn from those around them. I want to just say that's not blaming families or communities. There's lots of reasons, systemic reasons, including colonization, why violence happens. But yeah, we learn to be in relationships from what we see. And so some of the strongest predictors of perpetration include witnessing parental violence at home, experiencing child abuse ourselves, bullying as well. So kind of learning in friendships how to use power to get what we want. So bullying is a fairly strong risk factor for dating violence perpetration. And then as well, other things like mental health problems as well as substance use. There's a lot of overlap. But yeah, that modeling is important. And so we really do, especially if a youth has witnessed violence or experienced it themselves, make sure we're giving programming, and there are several evidence-based programs for this, to really help them work through those traumatic experiences so they don't carry that forward into their future relationships.
In our last minute here, anything that you'd like to add contextually or moving forward, what you hope we take away from what we're talking about today?
Yeah, I think one, it happens, it's prevalent. I think people still find that really surprising. If you're worried about it, ask your child. If they don't tell you right away, keep asking. And just when they do tell you, really try to validate what they're telling you, not react with big emotions. It's normal to have those, but maybe step away and come back so that you can really listen to what they need moving forward to keep themselves safe.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning. I appreciate your time and your expertise on this.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
That is Dinara Exner-Cordon. She's an associate professor and Canada Research Chair in the Department of Psychology at the University of Calgary. It is 3 minutes now to 8 o'clock. You're listening to CBC on this Friday morning. And let's get into what's happening in our news center. We've had Lauren Donnelly with us throughout the show. She is back again, and she has our developing headlines.
Good morning. Canada is being urged to act fast to attract U.S. physicians who want to leave due to the Trump presidency. The Canadian Medical Association says there's a 600% increase in American physicians visiting an online portal to learn more about practicing here. And one northern voter says he feels forgotten by politicians. The riding of Churchill-Kiiwetinoong is one of the largest in terms of First Nations voters. Candidates are racing to visit as many communities as possible before Election Day. We'll have more on those stories coming up after World Report.
All right. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks.
Still having a temperature around -1 right now, but we are going to head to a high of 16 today. Nice bright sunshine through the fog this morning, increasing cloud this afternoon, and it's going to be windy. We got a call on the commuter line. Something is happening on the Redwood Bridge, as we've been mentioning, so please update us if you can. We know there have been police police that have been heading to the scene. We know that some cars have turned around to not get onto the bridge and they're just staying on Henderson. So we don't have much more detail. You might want to avoid the area. We can tell you, though, that eastbound North Perimeter to another area, there is a collision just past Lagimodiere, cruiser on site. So 788-3093 if you have anything to update. And when it comes to the fog, just please let us know how that's looking out there for you, or maybe what you're not looking at because of it. Still ahead in the next half hour of the program after 8, our monthly interview with Premier Canoe. He'll be live in studio. Today we have questions about Manitoba's ongoing tariff response and what that looks like right now. Also, questions about the inquest into Aisha Hudson's death. The 5-year anniversary passed this week.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
The singer Tracy Chapman went from being a relatively unknown artist in the 80s to having a massive world-conquering hit with Fast Car. Tracy Chapman will be here to talk about how starting out as a street performer was what prepared her for the success that was coming down the road. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Canada has enough to worry about when it comes to U.S. tariffs, but a brewing trade war between the United States and China isn't going to help. What it means for the global economy when two powerhouse nations face off, that's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. There is no question one issue is dominating Canada's election campaign.
President Trump is looking to fundamentally restructure the international trading system.
The economy has been shrinking for 10 long years, well before the tariffs ever struck.
So we've got to get those tariffs removed.
And there will be more talk about Canada-U.S. relations again today. But about 100 mayors and other municipal leaders are trying to refocus the debate. They've all signed and sent a letter to the leaders of each major federal party. It offers 5 ideas to address climate change while defending our economic sovereignty. As Sam Sampson reports, they're calling the plan Elbows Up for Climate Action.
Jasper has experienced impacts in the last year that are profound, but sadly, they are not unique.
Jasper's Mayor Richard Ireland knows what an emergency feels like. 1/3 of his Rocky Mountain town, including his house, burned last summer in a wildfire. He and more than 100 other municipal leaders are now offering ideas to the next federal government to address the effects of climate change.
Our experience provides an opportunity, we believe, to help awaken the country to the urgency of this problem and present what we see as municipal leaders as solutions.
That includes funding a resilience, response, and recovery strategy for climate disasters, building a national clean electric grid, a high-speed railway, 2 million affordable green homes, and retrofitting homes with things like heat pumps.
I'm actually quite optimistic.
Former Toronto Mayor David Miller is now part of C40, a global group of mayors fighting climate change. He says these goals are achievable if Canada redirects money from fossil fuel subsidies.
And in this moment, when there is a chance to rethink about how to build a made-in-Canada economy, these steps are much more politically feasible.
Miller and Ireland hope today's letter sparks some kind of response from leaders, because so far, they say, climate issues have not been part of the campaign conversation. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
But environmental issues won't be the focus for Mark Carney today. Once again, the Liberal leader is pausing his campaign to act in his prime ministerial role. Carney will be in Ottawa convening another meeting of the Canada-U.S. Relations Cabinet Committee. Karina Roman reports.
In light of the evolving situation...
That's how Mark Carney describes the chaotic messaging from Donald Trump and the White House this week on where tariffs stand on the world and on Canada. Trump put a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs targeting most of the U.S.'s trading partners, but left in place across-the-board 10% tariffs on those countries. Canada has managed to avoid those, but...
We have been subject to a series of direct tariffs that are still in place with respect to steel and aluminum, with automobiles, and, of course, I will call them the fentanyl tariffs that are in place.
And that's why Canada is not lifting its retaliatory tariffs off U.S. imports.
And while they have been imposed under different pretenses, They all are unjustified, unwarranted, and misguided.
The European Union has paused its retaliatory tariffs, and U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has warned Canada of consequences if it doesn't back down, pointing as an example to the tariffs the U.S. has put on China. But Carney says he believes the U.S. understands Canada's position.
Those tariffs are threatening our families, our workers, and our businesses.
It's not clear whether today's cabinet meeting will result in anything tangible, but it does allow Carney to keep making the election ballot box question about standing up to Trump. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
China is ratcheting up its response to the punishing Trump tariffs. Beijing now raising its counter tariffs on U.S. goods to 125%. In the statement read on Chinese state media, President Xi Jinping is calling for the European Union to join him in opposing what he calls U.S. bullying. China is facing 145% tariffs on its goods entering the U.S. Even before China's announcement, the trade war with the U.S. saw Asian markets fall today. Japan's Nikkei slid more than 5% in early trading. Markets in Hong Kong, Shanghai, South Korea, and Australia are also down. U.S. President Donald Trump's diplomatic envoy is in Moscow. Russia's state news agency says Steve Witkoff will discuss the war in Ukraine with President Vladimir Putin. A Kremlin spokesperson says they may also discuss a possible meeting between Putin and Trump. But it also says no one should expect major breakthroughs during Witkoff's visit. As of today, Canadians visiting the U.S. for more than 30 days have to register with the government, just one of the tougher immigration measures being imposed by the Trump administration. Others more controversial, such as the deportation of alleged criminals before they're given a chance to defend themselves. The CBC's Katie Nicholson joins us from Washington. Katie, last night the Supreme Court ordered Trump officials to bring one of those deportees back to the U.S. Tell us about this case.
So Kilmar Abrego Garcia had been living in Maryland for about 6 years. He had a legal status that essentially prevented him from being deported back to El Salvador because he could face persecution from local gangs. But on March 12th, he was stopped by immigration authorities. His son was in the back seat of the car as he was taken into custody, and he was ultimately sent to a notorious super prison in El Salvador, which the Trump administration is paying $6 million to keep deportees. So the Trump administration admitted Abrego Garcia was deported through an administrative error, but also claims he's a suspected ranking member of the MS-13 gang. And his lawyers say that isn't true, and he's never even been charged with a crime. So this has been playing out in the lower courts over the last few weeks. And last night, the Supreme Court unanimously rebuked the administration and sided with a district court, which had demanded the return of Abrego Garcia. So the Supreme Court really essentially says in the ruling the government has to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody and ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. After that, a U.S. District Court judge issued an order which gave the DOJ until 9:30 this morning to deliver a plan to bring him back to the U.S.
Nonetheless, Katie, the Trump administration still being aggressive on the immigration file.
Yeah, and this is a large part of what Donald Trump campaigned on. Multiple outlets in the U.S. report that the administration is canceling social insurance numbers of immigrants with temporary status, which, really makes it impossible for them to bank or get a credit card. And in a policy that went into effect on Wednesday, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services says it's screening immigrants' social media for evidence of anti-Semitic activity, specifically targeting people trying to get permanent residency and foreigners connected to universities. So this all comes as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is suggesting any non-citizen can be deported for their beliefs. And this is all coming out of that deportation case of a Columbia University activist, Mahmoud Khalil, who was involved in several demonstrations against the war in Gaza.
CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
The head of the U.S. military base in Greenland is no longer in the job. She's been fired for undermining Vice President J.D. Vance. During his visit to Greenland last month, Vance criticized Denmark for not spending enough on security for the semi-autonomous territory. But Colonel Susanna Myers distanced herself from those comments in an email. She said Vance's views did not reflect those of the military base. Now the Pentagon says it has lost confidence in her ability to lead. There's a major push to make international shipping greener. In a global meeting happening in London right now, on the table, a carbon tax on shipping would raise a crucial source of money to fight climate change, but a deal today could impact an industry at the center of global trade. Anayat Singh has more.
It could be the first ever global carbon tax, this one on the over 50,000 cargo ships that carry international trade.
A really exciting moment.
Miyako Oshio is the Director of Environmental Affairs at the Shipping Federation of Canada.
One reason that this is so important is that it would enable investment in alternative fuels.
Oshio says a carbon pricing system would push companies to reduce their emissions. The UN's International Maritime Organization has been working on how to get the industry to cut its emissions. Andrew Dumbrell is a Canadian advisor to advocacy group the Clean Arctic Alliance.
Shipping is close to 3% of global emissions. If it was a country, it would be around Germany, sixth largest in the world.
Canada, along with Europe and a large group of low-income countries, support the proposal, but China, Brazil, and a group of other major developing economies that depend on trade oppose the levy, saying it would reduce their exports and threaten food security. They were joined by the US this week, which raised concerns about inflation. But there's still plenty of hope a deal will get done.
But it doesn't mean there won't be a deal, and it doesn't mean there's not a possibility for high ambition.
A carbon price could raise over $100 billion US a year, much needed money that could be spent on helping developing countries address climate change. Inayat Singh, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, we made it to Friday, everyone, and what a Friday we've got on our hands. The start of our day here, lots of beautiful, bright sunshine, fog that's causing some challenges, but a wonderful daytime high. 16 degrees is what we're expecting to get to today in Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This half hour in the program, our monthly interview with Premier Canoe. What a month it's been. We will talk to him about tariffs, obviously what this looks like from a Manitoba perspective. It's been almost 1 month to the day since we last spoke, and I can't count how many times the tariff situation has changed. So we'll find out more from the Premier about what he's hearing and what he's providing in terms of support. In addition, this half hour with the Premier, we will ask about the 5-year anniversary since the death of Aisha Hudson, and some of the comments that were made by Manitoba's child advocate about how we might do better for young people. We are waiting for the inquest as well into what happened specifically in her death. She was killed by Winnipeg police. And so we'll talk to the Premier about it. Stay tuned. Right now, let's go to our news center for other news headlines that are developing today. Lauren Donnelly is in. Good morning.
Good morning. Advocates say they hope that the return of advanced polls to Manitoba campuses will help boost the youth vote. This is the first year back for those polls after they were scrapped in 2021 due to the pandemic. Early voting at 4 post-secondary institutions starts April 13th. And a Winnipeg-born gynecologist says the actions of Donald Trump are driving her home. Dr. Jen Gunter, an outspoken advocate for women's health, has lived in the United States for 3 decades, but now she's moving back to Canada. The OBGYN says she has a lot of concerns around healthcare in the States. We'll have more in your local news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Abby, look at the hot spot in the province. McCree's already at 9 degrees.
McCree, look behind me. I'm now like a silhouette.
I know.
So sunny out.
So sunny. Love it.
A mix of sunny conditions, some clouds in the province. Some areas started off with some foggy conditions, while other parts of the province will be seeing clear skies. Right now in the city, it's sunny outside. Temperatures hovering around 0 and 1. Fog patches spotted in some areas. Freezing fog still reported at the airport, hanging around this morning, and surrounding areas outside the city. They should clear up as you get into the morning. Once they clear, we're in for a sunny start. Some clouds will roll in this afternoon. Winds will become breezy from the south through the day. Temperatures will climb to around 16 degrees. And then for tonight, the skies will stay mostly cloudy. Things would would start to clear up by tomorrow morning, and then we'll see those winds easing off overnight. In other regions, Brandon, Duff, and Gimli, we're seeing similar conditions already. Sunny conditions, temperatures warming up to 16 degrees. And then up north, we're seeing a mix of sunny conditions, clouds, and highs reaching 7 degrees. And then we're seeing a minus 11 in Churchill at this time, but we're anticipating a high of 0 for Churchill also at some point. Once again, Winnipeg, we are at 0, and we have sunshine outside.
It is very nice. The drive and the commute, though, not so much. There are some issues out there. So where do you want to start, May?
I'm going to start with the Redwood Bridge. I found out what's going on there. It's currently closed due to a collision.
Oh, too bad. Okay,
so
all right.
That's evolved in the last half hour. I would recommend avoiding the area if possible, and if you can plan an alternative route, start looking into that as well. Another collision, I think a lot of this is coming from the fog. This one is on the north perimeter, so this is eastbound north perimeter, just past La Jamodiere. Alyssa called to let us know that there's a collision there. Crews are on site. It was a bit tricky to see some of the crews with the fog, so be cautious out there as the sun creeps up today, and yeah, let us know. We have another half an hour before the next commute hits. So give me a call if you see anything getting in your way. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
(8:15) and Premier Canoe is live in studio for our monthly interview. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for coming in. So we obviously have a number of things we'll go through. You always do in these conversations, but I'm going to throw you for a loop because it's Friday.
Okay.
And it's sunny.
Yes.
And we had a debate on, and usually this is where I'd end our conversation, but I'm going to start with something kind of fun and flip.
Okay.
Socks. Like, I'm a Gen Xer and I'm ruined because of all of this. You know, I put on my spring sneakers. There they are. And I'm wearing the shorty socks, and apparently now I'm an old lady because we're all supposed to be wearing tall socks. What do you do when you're wearing sneakers?
This is the generational divide that defines our time, and I was shocked to learn. And even more so, I think when we get to the sandals weather, and somebody my age and older, we're going to wear sandals, not slides, but sandals with no socks.
No socks.
Right?
Yeah, like no socks.
And my teenagers, now adult son, the oldest, they're going to be very offended. And they're going to say, how dare you show your dogs in public? You're supposed to have socks, cover those things up when you put on the slides. So
are you being swayed, Premier, or what are you doing? Are you staying true to our generation, or what are you doing?
Yeah, no, I think I'm on team no socks with sandals, and team embarrass your kids too.
You heard it here first, kids. All right, 8:16 is the time. Obviously, we're going to turn to serious matters. We are live with Premier Canoe on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Because you're here monthly, we actually do have some. I'm going to start with a follow-up question. When you were here last month, we were talking about a family. We had a story we covered whose mother died. She was waiting for heart surgery. Her son and advocacy group were calling on the province, on your government, to track when people die on wait list. I know you said that you were going to look into this for us. What can you tell us about if this is something that Manitoba does right now or will do? What did you find out when you followed up?
Yeah, no, thanks for the follow-up. So we've actually, we're going to start with the cardiac surgeries. And basically, I got a memo here, which we're happy to share with your newsroom and folks. But basically, this is a shared health directive as a follow-up to what we were going through last month. So a couple of the quick points for listeners and people such as Debbie's family who are very interested in this. So before you get a meeting with a surgeon, you're going to get information about wait times and how long somebody with a condition such as yours might expect before the ideal time of getting a surgery. So that way you're informed before you go into the meeting. Then in the meeting with the surgeon, they're going to have both the target, but also what's going on right now, like a snapshot of the system, how long people in the cardiac needs category are expecting to wait. Then the work of cutting down those wait times continues. And then finally, yes, we are going to track, unfortunately, people who pass away while waiting. And we'll be reporting that. It looks like quarterly. And there'll also be a bit of work to determine whether, and I think this is where the matter really comes to a head, whether being on a wait list contributed to that outcome for that patient. So, yeah, we're taking some steps here, and I think given where the issue started, I can share that with you. If you want to
Yeah,
take a look
I'll
at it.
keep it in the news center for later coverage.
And then, we're just starting with the cardiac program because this is where this family raised their voice, first of all. And I think it makes sense for us to look at a lot of these life-saving interventions, like potentially cancer care being another next step, I would say.
Thank you for the follow-up. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Speaking of it being almost a month, it feels like it's been a year when it comes to following tariffs. And what's happened since we last talked on that front. So at this point, Premier, I mean, here we are, what is it, April 11th. Which industries are you most concerned about in Manitoba and why?
Well, it's manufacturing and agriculture, and for slightly different reasons. With agriculture, it's because there's a tariff war on two fronts. We have tariffs that have been applied from China on canola, some canola products, and pork, and those are both billion-dollar industries for us. So yesterday, we're announcing this global agricultural tech exchange center, the GATE project, so that we can diversify our export markets. And then, of course, we have the Trump tariff threats ongoing. But with the manufacturers, it's not just the tariffs themselves, it's also what's happening to the business world. All this uncertainty, all this risk is causing people to like sort of sit on money in some ways. And so even the threat of tariffs hanging over some manufacturers, we're concerned about that. And so obviously we've done the business programs in terms of tax breaks and tailored responses to individual companies that are reaching out to us directly or through the tariff hotline. So there's a lot of impacts out there. And in other areas, for instance, some manufacturers, though, are telling us the Buy Canadian thing is making a real difference. And so when you do make that choice as a business owner to source locally or as a consumer to shop locally, that is moving the needle for a lot of our Manitoba companies too.
When Liberal leader Mark Carney was in Winnipeg, he said that Winnipeg's NFI group or New Flyer, quote, may be exempt from Canadian counter tariffs on U.S. materials to allow the bus manufacturer to remain competitive on both sides of the border, as you know. What can you tell us this morning? Are they exempt?
Yeah, they should be. And we've been working with a lot of our big Manitoba businesses, smaller Manitoba businesses, to go through what's called the remissions process. That's just to make sure they're exempt from the counter tariffs. The point of the counter tariffs, and that's the feds putting those on, the point of the counter tariffs is to hurt American businesses and consumers so that they complain to Donald Trump and get him to change his mind. They shouldn't be causing pain on this side of the border as much as we can avoid it. So anytime a business like that or in the aerospace sector, I think one of the most recent examples has to do with a fire truck manufacturer here in Manitoba. We're working with those companies to make sure that they get a carve-out because we want to support jobs here. We want our economy to be supported while still causing pain south of the border so that people start to wake up to the error of Donald Trump's strategy.
So just before we leave this issue, I just want to ask you about the counter tariffs on China because obviously ag hurts here because of their response to that. And that was the last year that they went in place. Do you think Canada should back off of that?
The challenge that we have in ag is that this is on two fronts. So anything we do on China, so China's tariffs are retaliation against us putting as Canadians onto EVs. So you might say, let's just remove the tariff on EVs and get back to trading with China in terms of pork and canola. However, the bigger market there for pork and canola is the United States of America. So what would it do if we adjust the tariffs we have on Chinese EVs to our relationship with the U.S.? Is that going to antagonize the Trump administration and escalate the situation there? So it's like a complicated three-dimensional game of chess.
What do we do?
I think the first step has to be engagement. And so you've heard the leading candidates for prime minister saying like the day after the election, 2 days after the election, whatever it is, they're going to be in D.C. working with the Trump folks. They need to be engaging with the PRC, with China as well, too. And we have to figure out in our best interest as a country, protecting our jobs, protecting our values. What's the step on the American side? What's the step on the relationship with China that's going to be able to protect your job?
To another topic that I've raised earlier this morning on the program. So as you well know, this week marked 5 years since Aisha Hudson was fatally shot by Winnipeg police. She was 16. Just for listener context here, Hudson was shot and killed following a pursuit in which police say she drove a stolen vehicle involved in a liquor store robbery. Can you help us with the expected timeline for the inquest into her death? Because it's been 5 years and people are concerned. When are we going to hear? When are we going to know?
Yeah. So was getting an update on this yesterday, given your media interest. I think folks should expect this inquest to get going in earnest early in 2026, so going into next year. I think the reason for that timeline is this is much more complicated than a typical inquest, if we could say that. So again, inquests are always very serious matters, so I don't want to downplay that. Like an inquest that might happen for another Manitoban or their family. But in this case, you have a bunch of people who are going to be participating, the Winnipeg Police Service and, many other folks. The Children's Advocate has been speaking out about this.
So lots of moving parts.
Lots of moving parts. The amount of participants means that it's probably not going to be able to be held in the courts, so they're looking at other venues. There's a bunch of other legal considerations that need to be prepared for.
May I interject, because I'm wondering, this sounds so familiar. We're still waiting. It's been 6 years, and the community is still waiting about Machwar Madut and the inquest there. That's the South Sudanese man who was fatally shot by a police officer who was responding to a call in a colony apartment. So Aisha Hudson's been 5 years inquest, 6 years waiting for the Machwar Madut inquest. I just want to ask you overall on inquest, do you think that there's something that we should be doing and looking at to sort of even give it respectfully understanding how complicated they can be, speeding it up, because it's very difficult in cases like this, as you well know, for community to wait so long?
Yeah, no, I think that is a very fair point. I met Aisha Hudson before she died. Her brother and my oldest son played hockey together this past hockey season, so I know her family in a variety of contexts. At the same time, I know folks on the Winnipeg Police Service and the work that they do on a day-to-day level. And I guess the public interest in this case will be served in ensuring that the process is carried out in the right way. And so that's why these considerations about venue and participation for everybody who's going to be there, I think, are important. Again, the timeline shouldn't be allowed to carry on forever and ever. So there is that public interest argument to speed things up again, too, because you want to hear from people while the memories are fresher in their mind. You want to hear the perspectives of the impacts as well, while those are perhaps closer to the tip of the tongue of the people participating. So there's a balancing act here. Certainly, we're investing in the justice system in a lot of ways to ensure that there's more capacity there. And then this is part of the public safety conversation as well, too. Mm-hmm. And so having these inquests remain top of mind, I think, is an important matter of public interest.
One more question on Aisha Hudson. You mentioned the Children's Advocate,
yes.
Sherry Gott, who was on the program earlier this week. She was talking about hoping that the provincial coach program would extend its supports to kids in care to those over the age of 15. She said Aisha benefited from some of that help and aged out. And as she put it, Sherry Gott put it, she might have fallen into some risk. Is extending the age of eligibility for those supports for teens something that your government would consider or look at?
We're actually looking at it very, very deeply. The whole broader issue of extensions of care for kids who are in the child welfare system is not only tied into this specific story, but when we look at issues like homelessness and addictions and a lot of other social challenges that kids coming out of the child welfare system face, I think we're very deeply engaged with trying to figure out how an extension of care can help them. So that's kind of a technical term from the world of social work, but what I would say to the average listener out there is the average kid out there in our society is staying at home for longer, probably into their 20s. They're living with their parents. So for some of these kids that are in CFS who are vulnerable and have maybe more needs than some of their peers, doesn't it make sense for us to extend the care into the 20s as well? The question for us as a government, though, is how do you deliver that? Who's best positioned to provide that support? So certainly we welcome voices like the Children's Advocate pointing at specific programs saying that they think this would move the needle. That gives us something to take away. And like I said, we're looking at this very deeply, and we'll take the Children's Advocate's advice in mind as we figure out how do we support kids so that everyone in Manitoba is safer and reaches their full potential.
You came out talking about trying to attract U.S. researchers here to Manitoba, and there was some pushback. You got a letter from researchers and scientists here saying that this is going to be a challenge, saying that there's been cuts to the agency responsible for providing the bulk of research. There's been a big cut to the funding. What's your response to that maybe before you're going to invite new people here, you got to make sure that funding is restored so researchers can follow through on staying here and continuing their work.
Yeah, we've increased the funding both of the last 2 years that we've been in office. So we have been trying to repair the damage. Again, just to make clear for folks, the cut that they're talking about happened under the previous government.
It did.
And
But
so
the increase in funding you put in is kind of a drop in the bucket because it was $100,000. So I'm not saying that's
a lot of people out there would like to get $100,000, especially that CFS system that we were just talking about.
But in context, though, when you look at what they were cut by, and this is why they're concerned, they were cut for Agency for Research Manitoba. It fell by nearly 51%. It was 26 million down to 12.7 million. So in that context, the 100,000 is not enough of what's needed, they say. So, but how do you speak to their concerns?
Well, that is the context we make decisions in. You asked me a question about healthcare. Then you asked a question about more funding for the justice system, and then a question about more funding for kids who are vulnerable in our community, and then research. And so I would say, yes, we've increased funding for researchers in Manitoba. We're about to roll out an ad campaign to try and recruit more Americans who are feeling disillusioned or even losing their immigration status. But at the same time, job number one we were elected on was to fix healthcare. One of the other big priorities that we see is on public safety and helping on the social issues. So we're moving things forward in a lot of different ways. And I would just say that repairing some of the challenges we saw under the previous government doesn't happen overnight, but we're doing it. And I appreciate these researchers raising this issue because it's one that I support. But again, within the context of trying to make investments to Trump-proof our economy and fix our healthcare, we're just trying to execute a balancing act.
Fair fiscal comment.
Yeah.
Before you go this morning, may I ask you, obviously you know that First Nations leaders have called for a search of the landfill to include Tanya Nepanak of Pine Creek, who went missing 13 years ago. Winnipeg police have told us, they say they believe her body was dumped in a garbage bin and taken to Brady. You met with the family. They said they left feeling hopeful. They left feeling assured you would try. Can you confirm that Brady will be searched for her?
So there was a search for Tanya Nepanak. At the time, I was actually a reporter here, and I remember that's when I met her family. And so I met I guess about a week ago now with some members of her family, and I shared with them. Well, first of all, I took the meeting, even though it was just sort of a last-minute type of thing, because I want to show the compassion and just the caring that they deserve. And I shared with them what I've already been sharing with our team is we're going into Brady. We've made the commitment to work with the city and the Winnipeg Police Service and the federal government to search for Ashley Shingus. And we have an idea, but again, we're just very early on in figuring out what that search is going to look like. And so I've said, all right, so let's think about Tanya Nepanak as well too, as we're designing this new search of the Brady landfill. And so what I told the family members that I spoke to last week is give us a few weeks and maybe a few months to figure out the logistics and health and safety considerations, and then we're going to invite you back in for a meeting and share with you what we got.
Thank you for sharing that much with us this morning. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Premier Canoe. That is our monthly interview, and your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's 0 degrees with mist at the airport. Sunny with increasing cloudiness this afternoon, windy and a high of 16 degrees. The northern riding of Churchill, Kiiwetinoong, Aski is one of the largest in terms of First Nation voters. Candidates are racing to visit as many First Nations as possible before the vote on April 28th. Raymond Robinson lives on the Pimicikamak Cree Nation. He says he feels forgotten by politicians.
To all of you out there that are going around campaigning, we are people too. First Nations are people. 1951 was the day we were finally recognized as being people, being persons in Canada, and having the right to vote.
Robinson wants more funding for healthcare, economic development, and infrastructure. The riding has been held by the NDP's Nikki Ashton for 17 years. She's challenged this election by Liberal Rebecca Chartrand, who came within 1,000 votes of defeating Ashton in 2015. Dylan Young is running for the PPC and Lachlan Donardi for the Conservatives. Canadian health authorities are grappling with a record number of measles cases. More than 900 people across the country have been infected since late last year. Dawn Bowdish is a professor of medicine at McMaster University in Hamilton. The immunologist is concerned about pockets of low vaccination rates in several provinces.
In Canada, Misinformation is not the major reason why people are choosing not to vaccinate their kids. The major reason is not having access to a family doctor or primary care physician, or not being able to get answers to questions that a parent might legitimately have about vaccination. So these require political resources and will to fix this problem.
She says helping people of all ages get caught up on routine immunizations really matters now as measles cases climb. Measles was declared eradicated in Canada in 1998. Canada is being urged to act fast to attract U.S. physicians who want to leave due to the Trump presidency. Dr. Joss Reimer is president of the Canadian Medical Association. She says there's a 600% increase in American physicians visiting an online portal to learn more about practicing here. Reimer adds the biggest issues to get them here are licensing, visa, and immigration processes.
If we've got the federal government working on the immigration process and the provincial government working with the provincial college to fast track their licensure so that they have that license and they can work in the province, that's the best way to get folks from the U.S. into Canada quickly so they can contribute to the Canadian health system.
Reimer says 4 provinces have already removed red tape to make it easier to license U.S. doctors. One Winnipeg-born physician says she, too, has had enough of the United States. Dr. Jen Gunter is moving back to Canada. The gynecologist has seen the erosion of reproductive rights during her 30 years south of the border. Now, with Donald Trump back as the U.S. president, she says those rights will crumble even faster, and she's worried about other social services.
The absolute just gutting of healthcare. You know, it's day after day, we're hearing about some new horror about programs that are being slashed. Academic freedom is obviously in peril at many large universities with grants being withheld.
Gunter says Trump's re-election has sped up her timeline of returning home. She plans to continue living on the West Coast, but now in Canada. Advanced polls are returning to Manitoba campuses after being scrapped in 2021 due to the pandemic. Elections Canada found in that campaign fewer than half of young adults cast a ballot. Muskan Vora is in her 3rd year at the University of Winnipeg and just got her citizenship. She'll be marking an X for the first time.
It's complex. I wish there was a way that it was made easy for newcomers to get to know about how they can vote. Like, talk to someone on the phone and get some more information about it. That would be great.
Early voting at 4 post-secondary institutions starts April 13th. All you need is proper ID. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right. Thanks very much, Lauren.
You're welcome, Marcy.
Let's have a last look at what's happening on the morning commute. May McKillop is coming in to fill us in on what's happening out there.
I come with some good news.
Can you fill out my blazer? It's a little loose. I'm just kidding.
Filling out the week here with an open Redwood Bridge.
Oh, good. Okay.
We were reporting that it was closed in the last half hour, and it is just recently opened as well. I just want to quickly mention that Highway 15, I got a call from a commuter on Highway 15. They were traveling into the city and reported poor visibility due to that fog.
Okay, so still sticking around. Yeah. Sometimes it's done by the end of the show. Thank you, May.
You're welcome.
Abby, quick look at the weather.
Yeah, we're looking at mild conditions in the southern part of the province, and it's going to be chilly up north. Sunny down south here, classic spring day, mid highs. We're going to see 15, 16, 17s in most regions down south, and Dauphin is not far beyond 13 degrees and breezy. Thompson stays cool, high of 11. Some clouds and rain would roll in to the Churchill region. We'll see highs near 2 degrees. I'll just tell you, winter is still getting like 1 foot in the door.
Yeah, you know what though? This morning, while it's still sunny and going to be 16, let's get out of here.
I know.
Let's go. Take the jacket off. Big thanks to our news department, Lauren Donnelly, Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, Aaron Broman, Alana Cole, and Joni Nicolo. This is all the folks that have worked all through this week. Our associate producers through the week, Abby Adiyemi, Calcada Mulligata, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, Corey Funk, May McKillop, Marshall Hodgins, Dylan Longhurst, Issa Kickson, Chloe Friesen, and Sid Sundance Horshig. And our CA reporters in unit are Shanley Vidal and Jim Agapito. Hosts Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundell, and Marjorie Dowhouse. And our show producers in unit, Wendy Parker and Donna Carrero. Our YouTube producer, Brad Lillies, Travis Peterson, videographer Warren Kay, and Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson are our unit leaders. Take care, be well. Thanks for listening.